Good morning, everybody. Whoa, sorry. Ahem. My name's Rep. John Michael Parker. I am going to convene this meeting. So we welcome you all to a joint informational forum between the Environment Committee and the Energy and Technology Committee. We appreciate the chance to bring a number of legislators together for this. We're going to start with some remarks from the chairs. I'll be brief to say, um, the point of today's meeting, joint hearing, informational session, is to keep this conversation going and to sort of see where we're at with what we all understand is a real challenge around municipal solid waste, and to see what are the challenges that folks that are actually in this industry and dealing day to day with these challenges, what are they facing? And what are the opportunities, what are the ideas that they have for what we could be doing from a policy perspective, but also from a community perspective to try to make some improvements. So today is to listen and to learn and to talk. The format will be we've got 8 different groups that are here with us. They're going to present for a couple minutes, and then we'll have some questions with the committee. The main thing that I've been saying is this is certainly not the only chance to have this conversation in the legislature this year. We know how serious of an issue this is and how many perspectives there are, and that there are perspectives that we're not going to hear from today. That's how this goes when we try to put a few people in the room, and we know that it's a big community. So for folks that want to be in this conversation, please reach out to us. We welcome that. And as we potentially consider some legislation in the coming months, we'd be happy to bring even more people into the conversation. That's it for me. I'm going to pass it to the co-chair of the Environment Committee, Senator Lopes.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping to learn a lot and not waste a lot of time.
That was good, Rick. Come on, people. Not waste time. It's 10 a.m. Representative Steinberg from the E&T Committee. Any words from you, sir?
Yes, here I am out in Gloaming. It's a little dark on our side of the fence. This is an incredibly important conversation that we'll be starting, and it's unfair to describe it as starting it. DEEP has taken the lead in trying to transition us from the old paradigm of waste management to what's in the future, which is what I hope we're going to hear about today. Suffice it to say, we need to do better. We need to do a lot better. We're shipping too much, bearing too much, and burning too much. We need to find solutions that are going to not only work for us on a state policy basis, but are something that municipalities can embrace. We're going to be hearing from a lot of different folks today who are part of that process. It's complicated, but we must be successful when we must be successful relatively soon. We're post single stream recycling, and what's next and how are we going to get there? So I'm hoping today will get us all excited by the prospect of talking trash. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Senator Needleman, are you able to say a few words?
I am, and thank you, Rep. Parker and my colleagues on the Environment Committee and my co-chair. Obviously, this is a topic that we've discussed many times before. I think that we need to focus on, is there a state strategy for solid waste management that might put us back in sort of the lead on how we deal with our trash? We've done a lot of work already in terms of advanced recycling. There are enterprises out there that sort this stuff. There's an effort on the part of DEEP, which I support, to do waste reduction. A lot of advocates believe we should do more to minimize the waste stream and use it for energy. That's kind of where the energy policy comes in here. But obviously, in my capacity as a first selectman, as a business owner, and as a state senator, I have multiple perspectives on how to deal with this. I think we need to sort of confront the fact head on that at the moment, the state has no strategy. I'm not a big fan of mandates, generally speaking. So I think that we need to find ways to incentivize meeting goals that we can agree on. And you know, when the plant up at South Meadow shut down, it resulted in about 1 million tons of garbage having to find a new home over a few years. I do need to acknowledge that private businesses managed to pick up the slack when the state sort of dropped out of the process in a large scale way. That said, I do believe So thank you to the private businesses that actually did that, because without it, there could have been garbage piling up on the streets. I do want to say that there's a very diverse field of opinions out here from a municipal point of view. A lot of towns um, don't have private trash, don't have public trash pickup and rely on industry to do this work. I think if it was up to me and I was writing the rules by myself, we would have sort of an overarching strategy and allow for competition in the marketplace that tried to meet our goals. Because I think that one of the areas that we've struggled with is when we create goals and create laws and mandates, they become quite hard to enforce. So I think that we need to work in partnership with private businesses and yet take a lead in setting that strategy. And this hearing is a welcome, addition to this year's schedule, whether we get legislation out of it this session or next. I think we have a job to do here in terms of setting the state strategy as we unwind what we've been doing, the remaining unwinding of what we've been doing for the last 45 years. So look forward to it. I had said that this got scheduled at the last minute. I have an appointment today that I could not cancel. I will try to be done in time to come back and get in for the rest of the meeting. But thank you, Rep. Parker, for being the lead on organizing this with Senator Lopes and Rep. Steinberg. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that and all the work you've done on this issue and your valuable perspective. So thanks for getting us started with some of those thoughts. I see some people in our audience are probably ready to speak. Before we turn it over, I want to invite Rep. Callahan to share a few words as well.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just very brief. Good morning, everyone. There's a lot of crossover issues between environment and E&T, so I appreciate E&T for being here. We have to manage environment, costs, and efficiency when it comes to waste, when it comes to energy, which is a huge topic, the cost of energy. So I do look forward to hearing what this hearing presents. Unfortunately, when it comes to this time of year, we're supposed to be in 3 different places at once. So if you see me bouncing in and out, it doesn't mean I'm disinterested. We have very competent staff here that are taking notes. So I appreciate putting this together, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. And I know Rep. Mara, the ranking member of the E&T, was here this morning and already had to jump to a next meeting, but we'll be coming back. So I just don't want to miss her or any other folks. I think with that, we can go ahead and get started. So we would like to call up our first presenters, our friends from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Commissioner Dykes, thanks for being here with us. So the way we'll do this, like I said, is about hopefully 10 minutes or less for a presentation and then some questions, and we can try to facilitate that up here. I'll be keeping a clock on this, and I'll give the winky eye or something when it's time to move to the next phase. But Commissioner, if you're all set, the floor is yours. Thanks for being here with us.
Of course. Good morning on this very chilly January day. It's a pleasure to be with you. Katie Dykes, Commissioner at Connecticut Deep. And I just want to say how appreciative I am of the 2 committees coming together. We get to work closely with both committees including on this issue. And I know we've learned a lot, and I think the state has benefited from the leadership that both committees have been providing. I'm thinking about the Solid Waste Task Force that Senator Needleman kicked off a few years ago, as well as the support that the Environment Committee and other committees have provided in terms of funding for DEEP over the years to help support municipalities that are leading on innovative approaches to addressing waste. I'll just, as the first speaker, I'll try to take Senator Lopes's model and try to be concise and also stage set a little bit. DEEP is released a study, or actually an amendment to our comprehensive materials management strategy a few years ago, where we shared some information about the challenges that Connecticut's waste sector is facing. At the time, animated around the closure of the Mira Waste Energy Facility, we highlighted the waste crisis that Connecticut is facing. And in many ways, we've continued to work on progress in various areas to address that crisis, but the fundamentals that animated that that characterization of the crisis still remain. Connecticut has, so let me characterize it. Connecticut has had a longstanding commitment to maintaining self-sufficiency in our ability to manage municipal solid waste as a policy priority within the state. And that means being able supporting programs to increase the amount of diversion of valuable and recyclable materials within the waste stream from glass and paper and plastic, as well as food scraps and organics. And in addition, our commitment to self-sufficiency in the state has also involved support for managing in-state disposal facilities to provide for reliable and cost-effective disposal options for our towns as preferred over the export of waste out of state. And so following that statutory direction, DEEP's comprehensive materials management strategy has been updated over the years to highlight key steps that need to be taken to continue to maintain self-sufficiency. The reason that self-sufficiency is so important is that when we are, that many of our states surrounding us in the Northeast are also running out of in-state disposal options, whether it's landfilling or the closure of waste energy facilities. And so that means that states like Connecticut and communities like Connecticut will be increasing competition over the long term with other states and communities to find communities outside of Connecticut that remain willing to accept our waste. And that is expressed in the marketplace in terms of upward price pressure on tip fees that ultimately come back to municipal budgets or residents and businesses in their property taxes or in the cost for disposal that they have to maintain themselves. So Connecticut has 4 waste energy facilities in the state that currently manage the majority of the approximately 2.3 million tons of municipal solid waste, or if you don't mind, we can use the acronym MSW that is generated in the state. And so when MIRA ceased operations in July 2022, that reduced Connecticut's in-state waste disposal capacity by 1/3. As a result, approximately 860,000 tons, or 40% of the state's MSW tonnage, is now being disposed of as at out-of-state landfills. The loss of the in-state disposal option is making Connecticut increasingly dependent on out-of-state communities to accept Connecticut MSW. And landfilling, and that steadily drives up tip fees for residents and municipalities due to increasing transportation costs and disposal costs at out-of-state waste energy facilities. The disposal capacity in the Northeast landfills may decline by as much as 40% by the end of the decade, and other regions are seeing landfills close and capacity decline. So 41% of the waste that's generated in Connecticut is organic material that can be composted, converted to energy, or processed into animal feed. And 22% of what we throw out by weight is food scraps, 70% of which was edible and okay for human consumption before it was disposed. Separately, 41% of what we throw out is organic material that could be composted. So DEEP is statutorily charged with developing a statewide solid waste management plan and amending it from time to time. And again, that plan is intended to recommend policies and efforts that are aligned with the state's waste hierarchy that preferences source reduction and reuse, recycling, and composting over energy recovery. And last on the priority list would be disposal in landfills. The CMMS, that strategy serves as the roadmap to meet the state's statutory goal of achieving a 60% diversion of solid waste from disposal. So just to round out some of the things that DEEP has been doing in the last few years. First and foremost, I'm very proud of the work that we've been the effort that we've been making to approach this challenge in a collaborative fashion. That includes working with municipalities to help understand what their needs and priorities are. We launched the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management in 2020 and had over 100 different municipalities joining in that effort, which is largely a virtual convening that has been invaluable to help understand the needs and challenges and also solutions that municipalities have been implementing. Through this the CCSMM, we developed a list of options for helping to advance more recycling and organics diversion. And that helped to then spur the basis for supporting a grant program to help provide municipalities who want to implement these types of programs with valuable funding to help to pilot different innovative approaches. And I'm grateful again to the legislature for authorizing $10 million for the original round of funding for this Sustainable Materials Management Grant Program, or SMM for short. The SMM pilot programs that we funded with that first round initially consisted of awards to 15 different municipalities, 2 councils of governments, and 1 regional waste authority, and totaled $4.2 million in funding. The objectives of the grant program were to validate waste reduction estimates, demonstrate the effectiveness of food scrap and unit-based diversion and unit-based pricing in reducing waste disposal while increasing recycling, and ultimately to help municipalities transition from pilots to implementing permanent programs that are best suited to the selected municipality. Very important to note that Connecticut has a whole diversity of different types of arrangements across our state, from rural communities to our cities, to our suburbs. And each community, there are different programs will be right for different communities. And I'm proud that we were able, with these grants, to support community-led and diverse program designs. I would say that these, in my view, the SMM pilots were a great success in that they confirmed the potential that these diversion programs have to help Connecticut municipalities save millions of dollars and help reduce the amount of export and boost self-sufficiency in our waste sector. A few of the stats. So first, all told, the programs diverted nearly 1,270 tons of food scraps. The programs focused on food waste separation, and they also resulted in increased rates of single stream recycling, which was something that we didn't expect, and waste reduction just beyond the increased diversion itself. So this represents an over 10% decrease in the amount of trash going to landfills and incinerators based on these voluntary pilot programs, and a more than 25% increase in recycling rates. And while those numbers, if they don't sound large to you, just keep in mind that most of these pilots were being implemented on a short term time frame and on a voluntary opt-in basis. And so if we felt that these stats were very promising to ensure that if towns move to permanent programs that were where participation is uniform and you might have more time for education and enrollment, that we would expect these percentages to increase even further. Participating municipalities have experienced an average decrease of 12% in waste tonnage and an average increase of 27% in diversion rates in participating municipalities. So from these pilots, we didn't expect that all communities would move to permanent programs, but 6 of the 15 did. Those include Bethel, Guilford and Madison, Kent, Middletown, and Woodbury. Just in the interest of time, because we're happy to follow up with more information on the Sustainable Materials Management Grant, let me also just highlight additional funding that DEEP has been privileged to help administer with the legislature's support. First is funding for technical assistance to councils of governments and groups of municipalities that are interested in considering joining existing or establishing new regional waste authorities. In my view, regional waste authorities represent the best of regional sort of multi-town collaboration to help provide different services that from recycling coordination, handling e-waste programs, but also providing for the towns to be able to collectively plan for and manage their MSW disposal options. And so I think you'll be hearing from the head of one regional waste authority. We think that this is a really important tool in existing statute, and helping more towns be able to explore whether a regional waste authority is right for them has been really valuable. And the COGS continue to be in the planning process for that. We also, from the SMM grant program experience from the first round of grants, it confirmed that the cost effectiveness and the cost benefit from diversion programs is enhanced when we have infrastructure upgrades that can be put in place at transfer stations around the state. And so DEEP has recently solicited applications from towns interested in solid waste infrastructure grant funding. We received a substantial number of proposals, and we are working our way through those now, so that we will hopefully be able to make awards, announce awards in the coming weeks. In addition, we were pleased that based on the enthusiasm around the first round of SMM grants, the legislature was supportive of an additional $10 million in total funds to DEEP for programs to reduce for another round of SMM funding. And we're also so we're working on developing that second round, and in addition, with an RFP that we hope to launch this spring, to provide additional critical support to municipalities, and maybe we'll even get a large city this time, Senator Lopes. But we're really excited to build on that experience and the interest from municipalities. In addition, we
Commissioner, we're just over
Yep.
10 minutes. Do you have one more
last
point?
thing.
Okay, thank you.
We are planning to utilize about $1 million of that 10 million to conduct a waste characterization study. And so we have been soliciting some informal feedback, including from the haulers, about the design of that study, and look forward to putting out that scope shortly. And the last thing I will say, while my comments here have really emphasized a lot of the diversion opportunities, we have also very much been engaging with developers who are interested in pursuing disposal options. And I know you'll hear from some today. DEEP's role in that regard is centrally around permitting. We have our concierge service. We are eager to work with developers who may be interested in engaging communities about the possibility of building disposal and helping them navigate the various permitting limits and requirements that would apply there too. So I'll stop there in the interest of time.
Thank you for all that. Excited to hear about the investments that are being made and doing good work with that money. I mean, as the agency, I know we all have a lot of access to you and your team, so we appreciate the chance to keep the conversation going. Are there any burning questions from folks up here? I have one thing I would add, but I'll open it up for a second. Please, Rep. Steinberg.
I want to thank you for trying to cram an entire strategy into 10 minutes.
Unsuccessfully.
It was hard to follow because you covered so much ground, but clearly the hardest thing we have to do is change behaviors of consumers. The legislature created the Recycle Connecticut program. How are we doing with the realm of communicating to citizens to change their behaviors?
Great. So the Recycle CT is a nonprofit. DEEP is proud to be able to participate on the board. It provides us an important avenue to have discussion with private sector entities who are like critically important to the success of our recycling sector. Education, 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 education. You can't do enough to help inform people about the types of materials that belong in the blue bin in our single stream recycling system in the state, and what does not. And so certainly there's always room to be doing more, and investing in more opportunities for education. Recycling coordinators do a lot of that yeoman's work at the municipal level. And in addition, I'll just highlight through the Recycle CT effort, which DEEP has been able to provide some funding over the years from some of our environmental enforcement funds. We were able to help support the development of the What's In, What's Out tool to provide for one consistent sort of, it's actually an app that you can download, place that you can go to plug in, pizza boxes or garden hoses or clothing, and find out accurate information about whether it goes in the blue bin, or if not, what you can do with it.
Could you just repeat once again where you go to find that information for everybody watching?
If you Google What's In, What's Out CT, that's how I find it. But I think the best thing to do is to go to the App Store and download it. And so we can share that link.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I saw two other questions. Rep. Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really thank the committee for focusing, the committees, both of which I sit on, for focusing on this, and Commissioner, and all the focus and DEEP on this really important issue. So as you know, I represent most of the towns remaining in Mira who are struggling to come up with options, and were left, none of whom, wanted to be shipping their garbage out of town for all kinds of reasons, as you know. So I have two related questions. One is, as you watch that process, the mirror dissolution process, and participate in that mirror dissolution board process, is it a value? Is it important to you to try to maintain some sort of public option for these towns? Or are you okay with this completely moving to a private, which in this case is one private hauler, which is sort of capturing most of the region?
Well, I'll say that, across lots of different programs that DEEP is privileged to implement, we always find, whether it's purchasing renewables or helping source the best options in terms of MSW disposal competition and collective bargaining power is really vital. And so, but it really needs to be municipally led and what municipalities would like to pursue. But particularly when you think about the Northwest corner, and those towns, which were some of the last to be remaining on the MIRA contract, having options, right? I think working together in whether it's in a regional waste authority construct or something more informal, gives those smaller towns more tonnage of waste to aggregate and then try to bid out. And it gives them more options for trying to pursue, support things like recycling coordinators or innovative pilots for handling recyclables or and so on and so forth. And so, we talk a lot in this home rule state of 169 different towns about the value of regionalism and working together. And I think this is an example of where I think those towns in that area can perhaps have more options and be less constrained to take on all those costs of those types of managing those types of programs individually if they can find ways to work together. And that includes being able to perhaps jointly be able to support investment in working around transfer station and infrastructure assets in the region. So that's of course my view, but this is again an example of where we've had the opportunity to speak to the COG at various points, and I think it very much needs to be municipally led. But we've tried from DEEP's perspective, again, with the funding support from finance revenue and bonding for the SM grants and the Regional Waste Authority grants to be able to help ensure that municipalities have the tools that they need, or maybe the startup funding to help build those kinds of multi-town options.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I'm spending an awful lot of time with my COG in those towns right now, and there is a lot of regional cooperation in trying to come up with a solution here. I do note, however, that by statute, the towns thought they had until the summer of 2027 to work that out, a couple of years, whereas MIRA would get out this summer, but pass it to DIS. DIS has decided not to do that. So now suddenly what the towns thought they had 2 years to put this together, they now have a few months. That is close to impossible. So I look forward to working with you and trying to help them craft that solution.
We appreciate it and are glad to continue to be in conversation. And I think this is a great example. One thing I've learned from working on waste is we get the most progress when you have your municipal leaders and their legislative leaders all working, sort of in conversation together. So that's really valuable. Glad to follow up.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative. We're just about 20 minutes, so I think we can have 2 more quick questions and then we'll keep going. Senator Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for your presentation today. Obviously, multifaceted problem requiring a multifaceted solution and lots of pieces to this puzzle. I continue to contend that food waste separation and diversion is a big piece of the puzzle. But, when we started down this road, more than 6 years ago, but 6 years ago when I really started paying attention to all of this, the landscape's not too much different. We've had pilot programs. We, unfortunately still only have one plant, one big anaerobic digester, despite our efforts to create on-farm digesters and create investment possibilities for anaerobic digestion plants, despite us sort of looking at the possibilities and having sort of multifunctional waste to energy plants as they have in other countries. and even other states. We just sort of are seeing sort of a similar landscape in terms of food waste separation and diversion. So I wondered, what your perspective is. You touched on it a little bit. We had a couple of successful pilot programs. And I guess successful, and depending on how you look at it, you mentioned that recycling, there was an uptick in recycling. And, I have a couple of towns that participated in that food waste separation. But it's just kind of, okay, pilots, sort of over, things are waning, and here we are again. So just wonder what your perspective is on that and what we could be doing policy-wise to sort of change the landscape and getting folks investing in waste to energy plants, particular to anaerobic digestion.
Great. Briefly, I think this is an example of where I know you'll be hearing from some municipal leaders who participate in these pilots. Again, it's town councils and mayors and first selectmen who are closest to the ground and best aware of what some of these what the appetite is and how to lead and be in conversation with residents about why moving to some of these programs makes sense and what the value proposition is. And so I think it's funny when we've had those conversations with municipal leaders, they often say, well, we want the legislature to put a mandate in place. And then that provides them cover to then say, well, this is what we have to do. But at the same time, mandates can be really challenging when you're implementing them statewide. As legislators, that can be generate controversy and feel like a big push, right, in terms of some of these changes. So I think that where we are right now is that my view is as we continue to have more pilots, so we continue to have more municipalities taking the lead in this area. As you have more and more towns moving to permanent programs, it creates a greater understanding of what these programs are, how they affect residents, and what the benefits will be. And over time, I think that contributes to greater, acceptance and understanding. But certainly, forums like this are really important to let people know that the problem or the challenge has not gone away, and that continuing to work on this issue is a priority. And I think that that's very invaluable to make sure that there continues to be progress and exploration of the best options. I think the similar thing could be said on the disposal side. We ran an RFI in 2022 or three. Years are running together, to hear from developers of waste disposal technologies, what kinds of technologies there are and what the possibilities would be for investment. And we've heard, we've been engaging with some who are navigating permitting processes or wanting to explore, but finding community acceptance to build new disposal facilities can be challenging. And so that too is, I think, similarly keeping the issue in the fore, making sure that we continue to all be in dialogue in terms of what solutions are right, I think is best to help ensure that there's continued forward progress on the issue.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks, Commissioner. One more quick question from Rep. Foster.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I am happy to see you here, Commissioner Dykes. I have a question. We had a bill that got favorably out of environment last year, aligned with sort of waste diversion management. It had very favorable comments on lithium-ion battery diversion. And I know that in waste management in my towns, that's one of their biggest, besides like the volume and maintenance, it's one of their biggest liabilities in managing waste streams. So I'm curious if that is something that you have a plan or promotion for, if you're advancing any initiatives this year that'll help with that specific
Terrific.
waste diversion.
Thank you for mentioning that. I didn't touch on extended producer responsibility, but those programs we've seen a lot of progress in the last few years working with the legislature on EPR programs, which are really valuable. And I think we've broken through and had a lot of success with those programs in addressing materials that are hard to manage within the MSW stream. And so my opening comments really have focused on the tonnage problem and looking at solutions that can help reduce or achieve more in-state self-sufficiency in terms of overall tonnage. But EPR programs that have been implemented to date, and including options for batteries, are examples of places where whether it's gas cylinders or tires, helping to use EPR solutions to keep things that can damage waste infrastructure, or lead to illegal dumping, continues to be something that we've seen a lot of success in working with the legislature on. So happy to continue those discussions.
Thanks, Rep. Foster. Thank you, Commissioner, for your time and all your work on this, and we look forward to keeping in touch. And thank you for your team for being here today and helping out. Next up, we're going to hear from folks from Waste Zero. I believe Mark is with us. How you doing? Will you push the little button so your red light turns on? It might be at the base of the microphone. Beautiful, thank you. Please take a second to introduce yourself and dive in, and I'll get the clock moving over here and try to let you know when we're about 10 minutes in, and then we can move to some questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, honorable members of the Environment and the Energy and Technology Committees. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts that we have today. My name is Mark Dancy. I'm the president of Waste Zero. We have been in the waste reduction business for 30 years. We operate in 40 different states, and we have been working on some of the SMM pilots over the last few years. So I wanted to share some of that, those thoughts, and also some of our thoughts just on the capacity problem that we have in general. Commissioner Dykes touched on it, and I think most people are aware of what we're facing. But it is a regional problem. It's also to some extent a national problem because there are 6,000 landfills. At one point in time, we're down to 1,000. They're bigger today, but they're still very, very hard to site. And what we get into is a logistics problem. If you're near those sites, great. If you're not, that's not so great. And so the costs go up with that. The waste energy facilities that we're also relying on here, there are 70 left in the United States. There's only one that's under 20 years old. So basically the rest of them are all near end of life. So that's another issue. That capacity is not likely to be, renewed at some point. And so we're reliant in the region on exports, as Commissioner Dykes said. Between Massachusetts and Connecticut, we're up to 2.5 million tons of exports every year. If you look at Rhode Island, they have one landfill left. In 2038, that will be gone. They will be the first state to have no disposal capacity at all. And so that million tons a year is going to be trucked across the state of Connecticut, competing for the landfill resources that are available to you. And so costs are rising. We're at about $120 a ton now, or close to that for much of the tonnage that municipalities are paying. It may not end there. Seattle is up to $200 a ton. So right now we're looking at $250 million roughly per year that the state, between the entire state, that includes municipalities and businesses and so forth, are paying to dispose of, just for the disposal of garbage. And if that were at $200 a ton, that number would be $400 million. So it is a significant amount of money that we're talking about. And as I mentioned, landfills, the options, the policy options are somewhat limited on the capacity side. Landfills are going to continue to fill up. They're going to continue to close. Just this week, Ontario County Landfill in New York, it was expected, but announced their closure in December of 2020. That's 700,000 more tons in the region gone. It's hard to expand these sites that are existing. When we talk about waste energy, the companies may be very well intentioned. They do a great job, but they're owned by private equity firms that their interests may not be the same as the state of Connecticut. So you're reliant on their willingness to continue to maintain those plants and continue to keep them open. And so the reality is it's not likely to get better. It's likely to get worse before it gets better. So what we focused on is reducing demand through materials management and looking at what can come out of the waste stream. The two main options that we've looked at are first, food scrap collection and diversion. The second is unit-based pricing. And I'll talk about the pros and cons of each. So food scrap collection is very popular. It's expensive to collect at the curb. So one of the things that we looked at in the pilot program was co-collection, which is collecting within the same stream as the trash. So there's no additional trucks, and that has a much lower cost footprint, although there needs to be infrastructure to make that happen. And the the infrastructure, when in place, could also work to divert other things cost effectively out of the waste stream. But really, at this point, food scrap is the big one. And there is, an opportunity with food scraps that other materials don't have. So if there's not a market for glass, you can only recycle so much glass. I mean, there are realities about markets, but if you have enough anaerobic digestion capacity, you can recycle it all. So that's a good thing that you have some control over, and one of the reasons that we think it's something to focus on. It is about 20 to 25% of that tonnage number also, so it's a significant cost diversion if you can get it out. I'd say one of the other challenges, though, with it, along with cost, is getting a high capture rate, like any type of recyclable, is tough. So that takes education, that takes incentives. How do you get people to do something in their kitchen that they currently don't do? And that's a challenge. So unit-based pricing is another tool in the toolkit, which has, again, pros and cons. It basically prices trash as a utility. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the concept, but the way I like to describe it is when we look at things that our taxes fund, like schools, those are public goods. Trash is simply a public bad. No one benefits from more trash. So when we hide the cost of it from the people who are generating it, they're going to maximize what they generate. It's just reality. So we've seen this work universally in hundreds of communities in New England and over a dozen now in Connecticut. So it's a very effective strategy, but and there are different types and different ways to do it, that some are more politically palatable than others. But the reality is, anytime a new fee is talked about or introduced, the political hurdle to get that done is a true challenge. So we have some ideas on what to focus on based on our experience over the last couple of years here. I did want to mention one thing about food scraps also, is that there's another benefit, and this is something the state can think about and the state can impact with GHGs. So a recent study showed that 58% of all methane generated from landfills was from food waste. So it's 22% of the material, but 58% of the methane. And that methane being responsible for a quarter of all greenhouse gases, that means that food waste and food loss, so those two different things, but combined are 8% of the world's GHGs. And to put that in perspective, if food waste and loss was its own country, it would be number 3 in GHG emissions, behind China and the United States. So unit-based pricing, the other example. So we have a chart that I don't know if you have access to it on the screen, but if you look at 1990, we had 900 pounds per capita disposed. That's trash. And then we added curbside recycling, single stream recycling, some extended producer responsibility, lightweighting of packaging, and lots of extensive education on recycling over that 30-year period. And we dropped trash from 900 to 740 pounds per capita. Today, Stonington, as an example, has a unit-based pricing program and a food scrap program. And the Connecticut average being 740, they're at 386. So it shows it can be done. There are a couple other towns that have success stories like that as well. So it works, but it's hard. I have one other chart also that shows we did a waste characterization study last year in Stonington specifically to show, well, what does Stonington have left in the trash? And so you can see that if you take the averages of what's expected to be in the 740 pounds that an average Connecticut resident throws away, that things like food waste are down from 167 pounds to 90 per capita. Textiles are down from 43 to 8. So they're getting the things out of the waste stream. And again, in the matter of time, I'm not going to read all the stats, but it's very evident that it works. Another chart on there is from Woodbury. They're one of the other pilot programs. And they started in the pilot phase. They had 15 to 20% food capture rate with their food program. When they went to the unit-based pricing portion in the full program this summer, they jumped capture rate to 50 to 60%. So pretty remarkable, the combination of those two programs. The adoption rate through the pilots, I want to stress, was pretty significant with transfer stations. A decent number of them committed to full programs. We talked about Woodbury, Kent, Madison, Guilford, Bethel, and there are other towns right now that are still considering moving forward and probably will. I'm not gonna mention them until they do, but but it looks like those transfer stations have been very successful. It is a different dynamic looking at food waste in a transfer station. You do not need the infrastructure of co-collection or a separate route. It's a much cheaper option to get food waste into transfer stations. We have 94 transfer stations. It really should be a priority to try to get all of those transfer stations offering food scrap collection, whether you have UBP or not. Also, UBP, as evidenced by this pilot programs, is also much easier to adopt across New England. Basically, almost 70% of the transfer stations in New England, fewer than that in Connecticut as a percentage, have a fee. It makes sense to have some kind of fee at a transfer station. You have people that opt to pay for private service, but they're still paying the taxes for the transfer station. So at least it's a really relevant, it's a sound political argument to say, at least the transfer station folks should pay for the disposal cost of what they generate. And that's why I think that's a much better place to look for implementation of UBP in conjunction with food scrap collection, and really should be a focus here. And the other thing that would help do is it would help normalize UBP in particular. So we do lots of work in Massachusetts. We work with 150 communities that have UBP programs in Massachusetts, and every neighbor has UBP. Basically, if your town doesn't have it, the town next to you has it. And so whether it's a transfer station or not, it's not the boogeyman. It's not the scariest thing on earth. It doesn't, bankrupt every resident. All the fears that people have about it that, are real, and those are political challenges for everybody. There, if you were to mandate something at the legislature, you'd hear the blowback, and the same thing if you were to do it at the local level. But I think getting exposure to that in the transfer stations can really help change the dynamic of what the consumer does. And at the end of the day, again, like I said, we went from 900 pounds with all the effort to 740. The only way you're really going to get the next huge bump is to get give them more options, and then to incentivize them through some type of, there are various types of ways to do it, but some type of UBP program that energizes residents to consider what they're doing on a large scale.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for sharing all that. I'm going to open it up to questions. We're just about 10 minutes over, and I think Vice Chair Rep. Baumgartner has one to get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. Thank you for that presentation. I appreciate you highlighting one of the communities I represent. I represent Grutnissick and Stonington, our southeastern corner of our state. And Stonington, as you mentioned, participated in the state's pilot program for the sustainable materials waste management program. And over the last 2 years, Stonington was able to divert over 750,000 pounds of organics, all food scraps that has been hauled off to an anaerobic digestion facility in our state, which is obviously a great move in terms of reducing methane, as you suggested. On the other end, Stonington has also been a leader with respect to pay-as-you-throw, implementing the policy in the early 90s. So for decades, Stonington has successfully operated that program. Over the years, especially up in Hartford, we have discussions about the policy and also talk about equity, how that policy could be adopted in other communities, more especially urbanized communities, where they may experience difficulty with compliance and actually implementing it amongst their much larger populations. So my question to you is, how can we take a concept like that? Obviously, pay-as-you-throw can work for a community like Stonington, a community of about 20,000 people. How can that work for a community, an urbanized community with a population well over 100,000?
So thank you for that question. I've been doing this 30 years, and I've worked with the town of Worcester, city of Worcester, for 30 years. They have almost 200,000 people. Their numbers are phenomenal. I think the challenge is, there are a lot of challenges, but it's been institutionalized in Worcester, so people have known what to do. And I do think it's can be even more of a challenge today to implement something from a political standpoint, but it takes a real commitment to education, to compliance, to making sure that people are held accountable for what they do. And that's very tough in a lot of neighborhoods. And so we do see cities and towns that have assistance programs and have special educational outreach in certain sections of the community to try to make sure that everyone can participate and that it's not an undue burden. But I will say that it is more challenging in some municipalities than others, but Worcester's an example where they implemented it a long time ago, and now it is just the way it's done.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Andre. Rep. Steinberg.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation. It sounds that for the communities that have embraced this idea, it's working pretty well for them. Obviously, getting to critical mass is important for it to work statewide. What's being done to communicate with municipal leaders across the 169 towns? You mentioned that a couple are considering adopting the program, but are we being aggressive in sharing the data and convening forums so that interested parties can find out more?
So thank you for that. Yes, we just had last week, I believe, the DEEP held one of the CCSMM presentations, and there were roughly 100, and I might get this wrong, but I thought there were about 135 folks that attended. So I think all this data was presented, different mayors presented, different municipalities presented their data from these programs. So I think getting out the information and showing that these programs do in fact work when they're implemented is important, and I think that's part of the reason that program exists.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming in. Are you able to speak at all about the possibility of expanding our trash to energy, our existing trash to energy plants?
So I would be the wrong person to answer that question, so that's not my field of expertise. I would just say that, I think what I highlighted with capacity is a challenge, and I think I think someone from who will be more qualified will come after me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rep. Dubisky. I appreciate the question. And yes, we'll try to bring a set of voices here today, so we should be able to get another answer to that question. I'll ask just one more as we wrap up. You started talking about it. What I heard was that opportunities around transfer stations as places to really continue to try to implement these policies. Can you speak to their infrastructure, the ability for transfer stations to actually do this now, what it might take to make that more possible? Do you have a sense of that?
So I think every transfer station has a different layout and a different set of needs with regards to space and infrastructure. But I do think that supporting any effort to reformat the transfer station so that they can collect food scraps now would be very helpful, so that it takes away one of the hurdles for towns to jump into this. Now there are some logistics costs and so forth to collecting food scraps, and they're not generally offset by the savings at this point. But I think getting that infrastructure in place would help eliminate one of the hurdles for transfer stations. But they're all laid out differently.
All right, I appreciate that. So back to the investment question. I do see that Rep. Mashinsky online has a question. Go ahead, Mary.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. When I worked on setting up the state solid waste plan like 35 years ago, we decided on the Environment Committee that without a mandate for recyclables, we wouldn't have the markets develop. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Do you think we need the food waste mandate in order for the markets to blossom? And second question, as my town was a host town at that time, what should we do for the host towns or at least the host neighborhoods that will have a transfer station that handles food waste?
So thank you for the question. The first, answering the first part, I think, mandating food scrap collection is tough without the infrastructure for the curbside communities. I think the transfer station communities have a lower hurdle to do that, a lower cost to do it. Whereas if you're a curbside community, having a separate route is extremely expensive to collect food scraps and somewhat counterproductive to saving energy. I think, one of the things is, I think, to continue to just explore the co-collection opportunity, because if you can get the cost low enough, then I think maybe it's easier to make a mandate that's affordable. But I think, ideally, we could have a mandate, but I think it's a pretty tough proposition for cities and towns without the infrastructure. So I think it's a chicken and egg thing. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of the question.
Well, the second question is for the town in the region that is now the waste collecting site for the transfer. So, and my town has been that in the past. So for the towns that are the regional hub for the food waste collecting, what do you think we should do for them to thank them for their service of being the regional food collecting site? How do we make it a sweeter proposition for them?
So, not entirely sure, but I know that the that Deep is trying to encourage this type of activity. So I think that's perhaps a question for someone at Deep on how that may happen.
Okay, I had my hand up for the Deep person, but I didn't get called on, so I'm
that's
asking
my
you the
fault, Mary.
question.
Let me introduce you to Commissioner Dykes.
Okay, I think that if we're going to have regional agreements, which I think are the way to go, and that's what we did when we set up the first solid waste system. Regional agreements are economies of scale. It's the way to go. But if we do that, the host town, in my view, should get some type of compensation for being the host town for all the other region towns. I think that's something I would prefer as having been a host town before. And I hope we can come up with something to sweeten the deal for host towns who are doing a service for their neighbors.
Thank you, Mary. And I'll ask publicly, Morgan and team, please let me know if hands come up online that I totally missed, because that was my fault, and we want to engage our colleagues that are there as well. Mark, we're just about out of time. I'll ask one more quick question. In terms of the service that you offer and from the diversion, trying to get those food scraps processed, do you primarily bring them to an anaerobic digester? And if so, what is that like, and what is the cost associated with all this, and how does that work for your clients?
So there are folks that haul that material and pick it up and service that, and they can take it in different directions. But obviously, Quantum Biochem is the one on this side of the state. So there's a cost associated with that hauling. That's the primary cost, and it is a fraction of the cost of collecting at the curb, but it's not completely insignificant. I think most transfer stations can afford to add it, and I think that should be incentivized and encouraged.
Thank you for that. Rep. Leeper, please.
Thanks, Rep. Parker. I just want to emphasize what Rep. Mashinsky just said, that if we want to be really serious about diverting food waste, which even if we went to a pay as you throw model or whatever, it all would go together because it's removing the heaviest waste. We are going to have to think really critically and in tandem about our siting. And if we don't think about how we incentivize communities to host these facilities, we can require food diversion and we'll end up right where we are with no place to send it. And a community that has dealt with siting and the difficulties of siting for other also critical needs, I know that we need to be having, I think, that conversation alongside thinking about how we incentivize different types of waste diversion, because we need places to site this infrastructure. Same even with the facilities to turn waste to energy, right? Nobody wants to host the infrastructure. So I just add that to really emphasize what Rep. Mashinsky said, because it's a huge part of the crisis. So thanks for being here. Thanks, Rep. Parker.
Thank you, Rep. Leeper. Thanks so much for coming, and thanks for your team for helping out today. We look forward to keeping in touch on this, and thanks for the work you do in our state.
Thank you.
We're going to move along and invite a municipal leader who's done some work in this space and can speak from experience, Mayor Florsheim from the town of Middlefield, who is joining us. What did I say? That's embarrassing. From the town of Middlefield, town. Jeez Louise. Um, the mayor was ill this morning and is coming to be with us virtually anyway, so we really appreciate you. Mayor Florsheim, please take it away.
Thanks, Representative Parker. Thank you all for the opportunity. Middlefield did used to be a part of the city of Middletown, although it's been a couple of hundred years. And certainly no offense taken. I'm glad to be with you all. I'm really glad to be following Mark because Waste Zero and Mark and his team have been extraordinary partners to the city of Middletown as we have worked on this issue over the past several years. It's just for context, it's great to have that explanation that he just gave of unit-based pricing and the opportunity that food scrap collection represents, because we have been experimenting and implementing both. The co-collection that he referenced is something that is taking place in Middletown. As far as we are aware, we are the first in the nation to roll out simultaneous curbside collection of food scraps, as well as the unit-based pricing structure, which we've been calling Save As You Throw. We've been doing that in partnership with Waste Zero and with significant support from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and it couldn't be happening without that support. So I'm here to really talk about what successes we have seen with that implementation, and hopefully to answer any questions that people have and share a little bit of perspective on where we can move this forward as a state. And the first thing that I will note is that we have not implemented this citywide. And the reason for that is that the Middletown Sanitation District, just one of the many challenges that we face on this issue is that just like on so many others, every town is set up a little bit differently in terms of how they deal with municipal solid waste in this case, but in all sorts of municipal issues. We have a sanitation district that covers the central part of the city. Middletown is about 42 square miles total. We have a population that is spread out across a very large geographical area, and our sanitation district serves the central business district of the city. So our main street that many people around the state are familiar with. It also contains Middlesex Hospital, Wesleyan University, some of our larger institutions and employers, and is also about 2,800 residential addresses, which this co-collection program has focused on. Many of those residential addresses are multifamily homes. It is sort of the sanitation district serves the sort of densest by population and also the densest in terms of the amount of renters versus homeowners in the city. That in itself has been a challenge for implementation that I'll talk about in a little bit. But I also want to sort of frame this in terms of something that Senator Needleman said at the outset, which I think is really hits the nail on the head, which is that we need resources rather than mandates at this point. In my view, I think that is what has proven effective in our state neighboring to the north. And Mark did a great job of talking about what types of steps need to be taken at the municipal level to make sure that there is compliance with these sorts of programs. But there needs to be a strategy from the top level in our state. There needs to be a framework that has buy-in from the legislature and from the governor's office and from the relevant agencies. And I'm really, again, appreciative of the fact that this conversation is taking place because it is a crisis that our state is facing that is going to get more significant as states surrounding us, the states that we are trucking and taking by railroad so much of our municipal solid waste. Those state legislatures are right now meeting to restrict or even ban that practice from continuing for a lot of the reasons that we're hearing about this morning, that it's not something that any community wants to take on, especially if it's coming from points, outside of that community's borders and even outside of the state. So the urgency is increasing. We do need leadership on this, and I'm grateful to the commissioner for the leadership that she has shown to this committee, to these two committees for putting this together today. And I think that if the market is established, I think that by bringing in more municipalities, providing them with the resources, but also there's going to need to be a seat at the table for the private sector and for the private haulers who have taken on that burden of the Mira towns, and who I know we're going to be hearing for later in the morning. But I think that environment lends itself well to this issue because of the second really important sort of framing that I want to give this. The question of mandate, it often is associated with a cost that the state is going to be imposing on the local level or on individuals. In this case, done the right way, again, I don't believe that it needs to be a mandate, although I understand, Mark was right in characterizing it as a chicken and the egg problem. We need to get buy-in, we need to get participation, but the real unique benefit here is that by treating municipal solid waste, by treating our trash practices as individuals and as a state and as localities more like we treat utilities, more like we treat our energy bills, our water bills that are calculated based on use, we're going to actually see a lot of residents realizing savings rather than realizing increased costs. And in an era where all of these utility costs are increasing, where the cost of disposing of waste in the ways that we traditionally have is increasing, people are seeing their bills go up every year, whether they are served by a municipality or by a private hauler. Just like their water bills, just like their energy bills, those bills are on an upward trajectory. And unlike with a lot of the other challenging issues, we have some proven strategies to actually reduce the cost to residents. And so I think that if we do have leadership, if we do have a strategy, we're going to be able to embark on the right kind of educational campaign, on the right kind of implementation that will see residents actually saving money as we also reduce the amount of trash that we are producing. And again, the experiment, if we can call it that, the pilot that we have implemented in Middletown in the sanitation district for those 2,800 households has borne that out. We have seen a 62% diversion rate of food scraps. I'm quoting from data here that is a few months old, but diverted 47 tons. That number is, I think, now closer to 70 to 80 tons of food scrap waste. Partnering with Quantum Biopower in Southington. I know that they're later on the agenda, and I think the point is well taken that we are going to need to have the same conversation about the siting of more facilities in the future, if this is going to be our overall strategy. But I'll let Quantum speak to this themselves. But our understanding is that we are still, as a state, far below the capacity that exists at that facility and at the other facilities that are doing this work for food waste diversion. And though we are going to have to cite more of them, it is not the same kind of environmental impact to have those cited in communities that a waste energy plant would have. And in the meantime, right now, what we need is more of it to be happening, because the capacity exists right now to have those food scraps diverted. And what we're also seeing is a significant decrease in actual municipal solid waste because of the unit-based pricing program that we have implemented. We've seen an over 30% waste reduction in the sanitation district, working towards a goal of 45%. The number was quoted earlier. The average Connecticut resident produces about 730, 740 pounds of municipal solid waste per year, per capita. The number in Stonington that is the only municipality in the state that has been doing unit-based pricing for a significant period of time. Representative Baumgartner quoted a number in the 300s for the per capita waste production in Stonington. So about half of what they see statewide, of what we see statewide. In the sanitation district, we are down now to 469 pounds per person, again, from a state average of 730. So we've seen, and that again represents a 32% reduction on average in the time that this program has existed in the sanitation district. So we are seeing really significant results. We are, I think, in a position now where we have proof of concept, and we need the resources and the really statewide strategy to see this happen at a larger scale. I'm happy to sort of keep things a little bit brief and answer questions as people, I imagine, have. Education is a huge part of implementation, and that requires significant community buy-in. But in any event, this has been a learning experience for us, and there's plenty more I could say, but I will do that in the form of hopefully answering the questions that are on people's minds. And thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I've got a question, but I will hold for a second. I see Rep. D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask His Honor, the Mayor, a couple of quick questions, and really it doesn't need a big, long explanation, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'm just wondering, for the average homeowner, how does this pilot program work in Middletown? Just as a practical matter, what does the average homeowner have to do on a daily or weekly basis? And then the second question is, could you just explain this unit? I came in late, so I'm not all that familiar with unit-based pricing. Could you just give me a quick, really brief explanation of that as well? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, and that's a great way to frame this as well. So thank you for that question. So unit-based pricing, essentially, the goal of that is to treat trash bills, your waste bill, from whether it's your private hauler or a municipality, more similarly to your utility bill, in the sense that the more of the service that a household is using, the more they're going to be spending on that utility. So to put that in terms of what we've done in the sanitation district, previously, residents of the district had about a $400 annual bill from the city for the service of the weekly curbside trash pickup and recycling pickup that they received. In order to implement this program, we did two things to the pricing structure. One is we reduced that fixed fee that every resident pays in terms of their bill to about $280 per year, from $400. And people who everybody who has a sanitation bill that they pay that is separate from their tax bill will understand that's a pretty significantly lower amount that you would be paying for a private hauler. And we implemented a bag program where residents who are in that, and this is in partnership again with Waste Zero, who spoke earlier, residents who live in the district pay that lower bill on a yearly basis and purchase specific bags. The cost of disposal of the trash is built in to the cost of those bags. And there's different ways that can be done. People can come to City Hall. We have grocery stores in town that are stocking them, and they can also be ordered and subscribed to online. So two different types of bags that come in a couple different sizes. We have bags for regular household waste, 33-gallon, 15-gallon, and 8-gallon options there. The 33-gallon bag goes for $1.35 a piece. 15-gallon bag is 85 cents. And another, so people would pay their regular bill, and based on the amount of trash they are producing, they buy bags that are commensurate to that amount. On average, we're seeing that people are realizing savings because, for instance, 2 orange bags per week plus 1 food scrap bag, which I'll talk about in a second, comes out to a cost of just a little over $100. So combine that with the $280 bill, you're still seeing a savings from the previous amount that you were paying, not to mention staving off the increases that we are seeing based on the increases in tipping fees that we're all dealing with, and that brings us here in the first place. So the green bags, the second type of bags, are for food scraps, and food scraps can be collected in the green bags. You can still throw them away. We don't have mandatory food scrap enforcement, but the green bags are significantly cheaper because it is cheaper to the municipality in terms of tipping fees to bring those to Quantum Biopower in Southington, the anaerobic digester, and have them converted into clean energy than it is to ship the waste out of state or ship it to an existing waste to energy plant in the state, which is what we do for other municipal solid waste. So by having these two types of bags, we have two different options for disposal. We have a number of different options that the resident has to reduce and control the costs that they are paying. And then on a weekly basis, they put it in their regular cart. They put it out on their regular day. All types of waste going into the same cart. It is picked up by the sanitation district and then sorted and taken to the appropriate disposal facility. So that is sort of how it works, and that is sort of the theory behind the unit-based pricing.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I know Rep. Chafee online has a question. Brandon, can you jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor, for speaking with us today and sharing your perspective on this. Also want to thank you for your leadership in implementing the pilot program in town. Towards the end of your speech, you alluded to some of the potential pitfalls in educating people on this. I know that when the program was first being implemented, I had several constituents reach out to me, and they were kind of angry about using the bags or buying the bags. And I found that once you explain to people why we were doing this and what the purpose of the program was in reducing waste and saving money, they actually kind of lightened up and agreed. They found that it was useful and they saw the purpose of this. So I was wondering if you could just kind of elaborate a little bit on the potential problems with implementation in terms of educating people, why we're doing this and what we're doing it for.
Yes, thank you, Representative Chafee. So Mark alluded to this in his presentation. There's always going to be political friction, and there's always going to be outreach challenges when it comes to implementing any kind of changes that affects people's wallets, especially if it is perceived as a new fee, a new cost, when in reality, this is something, again, that represents the opportunity for savings for the vast majority of residents, but it is also a convoluted topic, and it's a topic that in many ways we have not addressed it as a state because it is such a complicated topic and one that is difficult to communicate about in an effective way. And so there's a couple ways that we actually it was mentioned that last week the Deep CCSMM coalition had its full meeting. I talked a little bit about the program at that meeting. We also heard from some other towns, Woodbury, I believe, being one of them, who have taken slightly different approaches. Each municipality has taken different approaches to what the collection and what the rollout has looked like. But the consistent message from everybody was that communication and outreach and education is critically important. And also, no matter how much of that you try to do on the front end, there's always going to be need to be work that needs to be done in sort of a reactive way as well to people who weren't necessarily checking into the town council meetings or reading the paper or encountering the right information online. Having social media is a great resource to spread information, and it is also something that can be misleading or obfuscatory, as we all know, in terms of getting factual information out to residents. What we found really effective, again, when people would reach out, we had dedicated staff time to answering those questions. We had a significant increase in call volume to the Public Works Department from people who had questions. We're learning about it for the first time. But that did taper off once the word started to get out and once people started to realize the savings. Like Representative Chafee said, the questions do come, but if they are answered with what we're talking about right here, it is something that people understand and accept, and in many cases are pleased with. The biggest point of interaction between the city as the municipality, the sanitation district itself, and the residents is at that point of collection. When the can gets picked up every week or doesn't get picked up, that is where there's an opportunity to really make sure that there's information being provided. And so in practical terms, what that has meant is that instead of not picking up trash from non-compliant homes, instead of fining those homes that were non-compliant, that was really treated as an opportunity for education. So if there was a cart that was non-compliant that wasn't using the designated bags, what that effectively means, if you're not purchasing the bags that are designated, because the cost of disposal is built into the price of those bags, you're not paying your sanitation bill. So that is not a fiscally sustainable way to implement this program. It needs participation in order to be fiscally effective. So even though, again, the idea is to save residents money, save participants money, there still needs to be revenue coming in to be able to conduct operations. And so we provided stickers, tags for the carts that were non-compliant that provided information and sort of laid out where to get bags, how to make sure that you can get them online if that's convenient, why the cost structure has changed and the way that it has. And with sort of a little bit of increasing urgency as there is, if there is continued non-participation, eventually the sanitation district will stop picking up the can from homes that are not compliant. But really, we have avoided that in large part because at that point of collection, we've been able to use that as a way to get education out, as opposed to taking sort of a punitive stick approach. You can provide the information about what makes it a carrot at that point of collection. One other thing that I ought to say that has been really important and really a big challenge is I mentioned that this sanitation district is home to a disproportionate number of renters compared to the rest of the city of Middletown. Not only does that mean it's a more transient population, one where the education has to be sort of an ongoing thing, but critically, it means that the sanitation bill is not going to those residents. The reduction in the sanitation bill is not necessarily being seen or realized by those residents. It's going to the owner of the property. It's going to the landlord. So the landlord might be paying $280 a year versus $400, but it's the tenants, it's the residents who are going to be paying for those bags if the landlord is not providing them with those savings that he or she is realizing. We've had mixed results working with different landlords and tenant organizations to make sure that those savings are being passed on to the tenant. But this is an example of where, and there was a question earlier about trying to scale this up in larger communities. It is very effective in areas that are dense with sort of home ownership that have a typical weekly trash pickup service. In areas where there's multifamily homes, where there's larger buildings, where dumpsters are a big part of the equation, there are a lot of complications, that being one of them.
Thank you for that, Mayor Florsheim, and thanks, Rep. Chafee, for the question. We're going to keep moving. I'll ask my question and take my answer offline, and just to say that you appreciate sharing that incentives rather than mandates seem like a path forward. So, Mayor, I'd love to hear from you later about what you think the next step incentives could look like from the legislature. You've been doing great work on this, and we appreciate you sharing your perspective and want to keep the conversation going. But thank you for being here with us today, and we hope you feel better.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm feeling better just hearing the conversation. So appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Um, quick heads up. Unfortunately, our presenter from Quantum Biopower, who's a little bit later on, is not able to join us today. Is also sick. There's been a little bit of sickness going around this time of year. So fear not, we are still on schedule, friends. And with that, to get everyone in time. So I'm going to bring up Bill Corvo from Smart Technology Systems. I think we have a video that we are going to show to get things started. So I'll ask our team to get that going. And then Bill will jump in with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. My name is Bill Corvo. I'm the manager of a Connecticut company called Smart Technology Systems, LLC. The partners in Smart include O&G Industries, a prominent Connecticut construction and development company who I've partnered with in the past. I also have AWTI, the chairman, Don Fisco's in the audience today. What we have put together over the last 2 years is a project which will serve as a major example of how to get things done. I had personal experience when I was on the city council in Middletown implementing the resource recovery system, which Middletown adopted as ECRA, Eastern Connecticut Resource Recovery Authority, when they developed the Lisbon Waste Energy Project. At that time, the statute was clear that landfilling was disgusting. You were taking your garbage and throwing it in a dump. And we had the dumps in our towns. We weren't taking it someplace else. And they stunk and they were miserable. Today, you had, at one point, you had 5 Resource Recovery Authority facilities operational, including Mira. Mira was the largest at that time when it first began, 2,000 tons a day. Today, those systems are all aging out, and they're going to run into serious difficulties because they don't meet the EPA requirements for emissions and other greenhouse gases. As a result of that, you're going to have to, as a group of people, the state of Connecticut, we're going to have to spend serious money. And there's a couple of ways to do it. You can do it intelligently, which is one of the reasons we call our company Smart. Or you can do run-of-the-mill bureaucratic upgrades to meet the EPA requirements. I'd like to go to the video if we can.
Sure. Morgan, are we able to play that video? All right, Bill, we'll play. It should be able to be up on that screen.
Dim the lights so that people can see it in here. Or
let's find out. We can try.
Thanks.
I don't have that button in front of me. Bear with us one more minute. Wow. Now, welcome to the planetarium. All of the lights are off. Can someone get those lights back on? This is slightly unsettling. I don't know who pushed that button. D'Amico, was that you? Okay. Thank you for that. We're going to keep going, Bill. We'll make sure everyone gets the video sent to them. If you could
Okay.
give us an overview of it, and then we can get through some questions on it. We'd appreciate that.
That's fine.
Thanks.
Then what I'll do is I prepared, just in case, I prepared a printed presentation for everybody. And you have a copy of that, so that can go to everybody when you send them the video. Basically, the smart technology solution that we've been working on for the last 2 years provides an intelligent solution to address Connecticut's overwhelming MSW crisis. The solution uses state-of-the-art advanced sorting coupled with proven modern waste processing and conversion technologies to transform Connecticut's MSW into sustainable, renewable energy while achieving lower emissions, capturing carbon, and meeting future EPA standards. The smart solution is designed to replace the lost MSW processing capacity of MIRA, all within state boundaries and with a substantially lower impact to the environment. It is designed to process 468,000 tons of MSW a year, 9,000 tons per week. The way it works is we've set up on the front end an advanced sorting system. We've been working with a company called BHS, which is probably one of the best advanced sorting companies in the United States. Their technology utilizes artificial intelligence as part of the sorting process. And basically, you have this bulk handling system, so the MSW comes into the plant, and the separation program begins. It separates 99% of the metals, 99% removal from RDF, refuse design fuel, and recovers 90% of this material from the waste stream. We also separate 98% of the glass, and we also separate organic residue. We remove hazardous materials in what we call the pre-sorting process. So think of a large building with all sorts of conveyor belts, which you'll see on the video. And this is world-tested technology. It's been run through the mill, not just here, but all over the place. And this is the front end of the smart process. The next level is, so you take all of the glass and all of the recyclables and the anaerobic digestion material, and it all goes to different locations to be used properly as part of the recycling process. The next level is what's left is what we call refuse design fuel. So this fuel goes into a proven technology, which is a Valmet gasification technology. Valmet is a company from Finland that has been operational here in the United States for a number of years on a variety of projects. This system, gasification system, basically the RDF, the chopped up garbage that's left, is placed in a large tube, which is sealed, and the oxygen is taken out of the tube, and then heat is applied to the tube. And what happens is the RDF separates into its component parts. The solids get turned into ash, which fall to the bottom of the tube. And then synthetic gas is the other component that goes up to the top of the tube. The way this works is the gas is then filtered. They have a gas filtration technology. It's cooled and filtered, and then it's sent off to be used in a steam turbine system. But the steam turbine system for this 1,800 ton, well, it's 1,250 tons per day because we're operational 7 days a week. The electricity production is 45 megawatts gross of base load renewable electricity available 24/7. That's important. And then the net value is 40 megawatts. We have 5 megawatts of load that we use to run the operation. As part of the separation process, we take the anaerobic material and send it off to an anaerobic digester, which is going to be located also on the campus. The anaerobic digestive system is a design that's brought forward by the BHS entity. It's called Zero Waste Energy. On the back end of the anaerobic digestive system, we have a carbon capture system. So we take the carbon dioxide and it gets turned into a liquid, which can then be used to have food grade carbon dioxide. And there is a very large demand for food grade carbon dioxide right now. So in essence, the anaerobic material, in addition to producing renewable natural gas, which would go into a natural gas pipeline located in proximity to our campus, we also do the carbon capture for the food grade CO2 production. This whole process reduces air emissions instead of venting it into the air. Okay, we basically are converting everything into usable products that we can. The SMART system provides what we consider to be the most socially responsible solution for Connecticut to handle its MSW going forward within the state. That's an important element. When they did the resource recovery systems, there wasn't a lot of dancing around about what we were going to do. We sent our garbage to the resource recovery systems. And everybody was pleased to have that available. There were some defects in the methodologies, but that was 40 years ago. Since then, we've learned a lot of other information, and there's been upgrading in technology. Unfortunately, the statutory methodology that was used to create the resource recovery system did not enable those entities to take advantage of the things that helped create the resource recovery system to begin with. The systems have not upgraded properly, and they're aging out, and it's a matter of time before they all start closing up, unless you spend serious millions and millions of dollars to update it. Our solution allows Connecticut to develop what we call self-sufficient methodologies by increasing in-state municipal solid waste handling just at our location. And to put it into terms that everybody understands, you would probably need 6 projects like SMART to be able to handle MSW in the state of Connecticut. Fine. But what you're avoiding is the large amount of greenhouse gas emissions and transporting your waste hundreds and hundreds of miles outside of Connecticut. And then you get the benefit of going to a landfill where you're going to get the greenhouse gas impacts that are going to come back and hit Connecticut people in the head.
Bill, I'm going to open it up for questions. I appreciate the overview that you shared and
Sure.
a really exciting solution. I think Rep. Steinberg wants to get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, we're intrigued by your technology, and I think we take your point that the legacy facilities are not meeting the need and are also reaching the point of no return. But I guess the question I have for you is there any prospect of retrofitting existing facilities to handle some of your smart technology that might create a lower cost solution to achieving the same end?
Yes, you'd have to go on a facility by facility basis. Right now, you've got 4 operating resource recovery facilities around the state in Bristol and Bridgeport. And then you've got Lisbon and what is it, Putnam, I think. So the problem that you have right now is some of your resource recovery facilities were placed in locations that are questionable today. Even if you implement, for example, to give you an idea, we have a piece of property that ONG is bringing to the party that's used as a sand and gravel pit in the middle of nowhere. And it's 450 acres of land. And there's nothing on the property except the sand and gravel operations right now. And basically, we would be using for our facility, it's a completely contained facility, about 120 acres, approximately. So our suggested approach is if we implement our project, which we're going into permitting now, we're not waiting, we're going to go into permitting. And if we implement that methodology going forward, we could probably redo some of the other resource recovery facilities, implementing parts of our technology, but they still need the front end upgrade for the recycling. As part of the recycling, the reason I wanted to show you the video, you have to watch this thing taken to bags. I call them pink pork chop bags. Actually, the AI picks it up, drops it into a location, that goes off to the anaerobic digester. So you don't have to go crazy and say, okay, let's put everything in this suitcase and everything else in that suitcase. You bring the MSW to the plant and the system takes care of it. I'm familiar with Lisbon because I was on the city council in Middletown when we approved that. I know that the Lisbon project would probably be able to be rehabilitated when ready to implement a smart process. You have to look at them as a one-on-one basis. Bridgeport is a very tight campus, close to an urban center, and we understand what the problems that are, even though we're substantially cleaner than any existing resource recovery authority. The reason smart's of value is you're dropping the emissions through the floor. You're doing the anaerobic digestion on the campus that you're producing renewable energy with. And that produces renewable gas that goes into the gas system. And total megawatt production is only 45 gross, 40 net for our system. So if you do that times 6, you're slightly under 300 megawatts of electricity power.
What would a new facility cost? So we have some sense about what 6 would cost and who pays for that?
Well, under the current system, there is no structure really to be able to build it with a Connecticut Waste Authority type system. What we're advocating for is implement the Connecticut Waste Authority and learn from the lessons that you got from how resource recovery was done and improve it. We look at the MSW as the equivalent of sewage. Okay? After you leave it out in the field for a while, you'll agree with me. Okay? And nobody wants garbage on their property. This handles the problem. That costs probably in the $600-700 million range.
For one facility.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. I want to get a question from Senator Lopes. Thanks, Representative.
Sorry, I missed the beginning. Just, are any of these facilities up and running, even at a smaller scale, currently in the U.S.?
Not in the U.S. No, we've entered into a special agreement with the Valmet company so that we're going to be able to bring this forward, starting with Connecticut and then moving across the country.
Starting here?
Yeah.
Timeline?
Assuming that we can get the permits out of the way, might take a year or so, year and a quarter. We should be operational by 2028. What would expedite that is the development of your waste authority system. We got the technology. We also have the people that can build this plant. It can go operational and we can get in bed with private operators to do that. But the incentive for the state of Connecticut is to set up permanent municipal solid waste processing facilities of this type that take care of all of the state's needs. And you're not going to have landfills to go to. And if you are, you're going to be paying tipping fees through the nose going forward. And I'm talking about right now you're like $140. You're going to be in the $200 range. And
I doubt it'll ever go down.
no.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks, Bill. I guess my last question, unless I see anything from my colleagues up here, the $600, $700 million price tag, how's that going to get paid? To the extent you can share with us.
You borrow money. Don't do anything. Don't take any positive action. And the tipping fee is going to take care of everything. Because if you're getting $180 to $200 a ton for tipping fees, everybody's in the state's going to be paying a lot more for their MSW garbage handling. So don't do anything, it'll go private. Do something smart, and you will be able to stabilize the tipping fees and make sure everything gets done by the environmental book. We're here to do both, either. We prefer working with the state to evolve a situation. We have some clear thoughts on that, and I'll be glad to meet with anybody.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing with us today, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And certainly appreciate the new ideas that you're bringing. We had a question earlier about new capacity, and so this sort of connects to that.
When you take a look at the video, it's only 5.5 minutes long, and it shows detail on everything, especially the recycling system, and it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, our clerks will make sure that gets out to the committee. Appreciate you being here, Bill. In line with kind of the current system that we have now, we're going to hear from some folks that have a big hand in that. It looks like our screen is working again. Thank you for getting that sorted. I'd like to invite Frazier from Reworld. Are you with us online and able to jump in?
I am here.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. Frazier, take it away.
Oh, well, terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of both committees. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I am here with my colleague, Tom Hickey, who is the Vice President of the market area, which includes Connecticut for Reworld. And I'm going to let him sort of lead us off and then chime in accordingly. Tom?
Yes, so good morning, Representative Parker, committee chairs, and committee members of the Environment and Energy Technology Committees. Thanks for inviting Reworld to participate. We play a vital role in the state, and we intend to continue to. As Frazier stated, I'm the Regional Market Area Vice President for all of our East region, so everything from Massachusetts down through Pennsylvania into Maryland. So in that area, we've got 16 different EFWs and 13 different transfer stations. So a long-standing established technology that offers environmentally sound disposal capacity to our various municipal and commercial partners. So these facilities along the East Coast manage over 10 million tons of waste every year in an environmentally sound manner. And as we stated before, in Connecticut, we're a net waste exporter. So in Connecticut, with the 2.3 million tons of MSW that's generated annually, you're still exporting about 860,000 tons. On the part of what we do annually, the in-state disposal capacity is 1.4 million tons, and we process 473,000 of those tons annually at our Preston and Bristol facilities. As stated before, energy from waste is a vital part of the waste generation and disposal challenge for Connecticut. It has been for many years, and the energy from waste part has been shrinking recently. Closure of the Wallingford facility some years ago, closure of the Hartford facility back in July of 22. We don't consider energy from waste to be the solution, to the challenges, but we do believe that we're a vital part of the solution to the challenge, along with the efforts associated with waste reduction, waste diversion, recycling, anaerobic digesting, composting, and other emerging technologies. We coexist and partner well within our communities with all of those other options. Some of our most efficient plants operate in some of the heaviest level of recycling that takes place along the East Coast. Our operations work best when we reduce the plastics and the papers that go in our facilities. We actually are able to operate more efficiently to generate steam on a more efficient basis. It's a common misconception that we love BTUs, that we love high BTU valued waste, which generally is thought of as the recyclable materials. We actually want the opposite. We like waste that has a reduced value of BTU because that is our best recipe for creating steam, which then creates the electricity. We truly believe that we're partners with communities, and I think our relationship with the BRFOC is a great example of those partnerships. We're proud to have Bristol partner with those 14 communities in the BRFOC, and we work really closely with them, not just at the facility, but across the state for our efforts. The reality is that's been mentioned previously by a couple of folks. It's expensive to process waste, and it's expensive to operate these energy from waste facilities. We make significant investments in our state-of-the-art facilities every year. I jotted down some numbers here. At our Preston facility, we spend on capital expenses a little over $4 million annually, and our 2025 capital expenditure budget is a little over $5 million. We make the investments to keep these facilities efficient, with the strongest level of emission control standards, to make sure we're a good partner in the community. You look at Bristol, our annual capital expense is a little over $5 million, and this year we're budgeted to spend a little over $7 million. And that $5 million does not include the $11 million we spent in 2023 that included upgrading our baghouse. So that $5 million isn't a normal run rate year, but we did have an extraordinary expense in that year to make sure that we could operate well into the future. The narrative that's been presented here today, that these are aging assets that are just doomed to fail in the near future, frankly, it's just wrong. They are doomed to fail if you don't invest. And that's why it's necessary to have partners like in the private equity, which has also been referenced to be not aligned with the same ideals and goals as the communities that we're in. When we were purchased recently by private equity and EQT, they actually funded us out of an equity fund that has minimum sustainability requirements and benchmarks to remain at their funding status. So the idea that we can't coexist is frankly misguided, and it's frankly misstated. And I just wanted to make sure that we took an opportunity to say that. I know this is not a debate, but I wanted to make sure that we understood that some of the narrative that's been stated might be a little bit off base. As part of our commitment to being a partner in the state, we have recently initiated some efforts to expand our capacity at our Preston facility. We're very early in those stages. We think it's an encouraging opportunity, an exciting opportunity for us, especially to work with the state and with the various communities to push that project forward to increase not only the capacity in state, but to upgrade the facilities at the same time. We're capable of making those investments. This isn't just an idea that we have. This is something that we do every day across the country. We've got over 93 facilities that we operate countrywide. We're the largest energy from waste processor in the country by a factor of 3. And we're really proud of what we do. Now, with that, I want to take some time to answer some questions, but I will let Fraser kick in on anything she wants to kick in on.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. I just wanted to point out there was a statement made that our facility, the waste energy facilities, are not meeting are not able to meet the EPA standards. That's categorically false. At our 2 facilities that we operate in Connecticut, we operate up to 97% below the federal emission limits. and we are 99.91% compliant with our SEM standards. So I thought that was important to mention. In terms of the idea of additional capacity in Preston, we have had some preliminary conversations, as Tom said, with local governments and stakeholders, and SCARA, which is the waste authority there. They own the property where our facility, our Preston facility, is located now, and so we are engaging all levels of government in terms of explaining our concept and our ability, most importantly, in some ways, to fund this project ourselves. So the idea of a $700 million facility, as the smart gentleman just mentioned, well, that's the number that we're talking about in Preston, but we have the private equity to invest ourselves in that facility. So we're not looking for the state to invest, or we don't need the state to invest, and we're not asking the state to invest. So we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Fraser and Tom, both for being here. As I look around, folks, let me know if you got other questions. I'll get started. We've heard and appreciate you sharing the perspective on the upgrades investments you've been making into your facility, and certainly the important role you're playing in our current system right now, managing all of that. I guess my first question is, from that investment perspective, what do you wish the state was doing differently? Whether that's incentivizing, supporting, sort of new policy ideas, what have you got around that to make sure that the facilities that you're currently running, which are managing so much of our waste, are doing that as efficiently and environmentally sustainably as possible? And then maybe connected to that, in terms of what the state could be doing, do you have new ideas for some of these other technologies that we've heard a little bit about, being able to link better with digesters, gasification, some of the other things that are on the table? Maybe you can speak more about the Preston project, but would like to hear about what, from your perspective, you think the state could be doing a better job of.
If Tom, can I jump in just quickly with one policy that we have worked on with these committees quite a bit over the last few years, and that is incentivizing the renewable energy that we that we generate at these facilities. The plants are built to manage waste. That's their primary function and primary purpose. But the energy that we generate is an important part of the economic viability of these facilities. And so recognizing the value of that electricity and putting a premium on it is a way to help us fund the economic, fund the investments that we are making in these facilities. So that's one policy that I know you all can and have made adjustments to over the years. Then I'll just say one more thing. In terms of other technologies, the SCARA is currently in the final stages of the permitting process for a food waste composting operation at the site where our Preston facility is located. So a new facility that we would build to replace the old facility would be able to work in concert next door to the SCARA food waste processing facility. Tom?
And I think that's a vision we have across the country, is these eco-industrial parks. We have evolved from a pure energy from waste play to handling a lot of different specific waste streams. We do a lot of water treatment. We partner with anaerobic digestions. We see an eco-industrial park that processes C&D, that processes the organic waste, separates out the recyclables, and then processes through the EFW what's left. We in no way think that is a single source solution, is to just process through the FW. And our perfect vision going forward is to have 4 or 5 different facilities that can handle all of that material, then to use the power that we generate at our energy from waste to help power that, and frankly, to reduce the trucking costs and the impacts on the environment of the trucking between those facilities that inherently happens if they're not co-located.
Thank you for that. It seems exciting to think about, the co-location of the ways to partner these different pieces of the system. I know Rep Steinberg has a question. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Just following up on your most recent commentary, could you help us better understand the opportunity with co-locating with a composting facility? Is this a complement to aerobic digestion, or just part of the chain of transfer? How does composting factor into the broader solution?
I think it's again, it's part of the solution. So when you take the various waste streams, there's a lot of wood product, there's a lot of organics, and it's what's curb separated. Okay, can do that. Some of the technologies, I spent a decent amount of time in Europe. They do a good job of separating on site. We've made efforts into that in the United States before, and it hasn't been viable at the time. We're not sure it's viable now to separate on site. The level of contamination that takes place on that and pushes material back out is a challenge to us. But frankly, putting those on site allows us to take every waste stream in at the site, combine resources in order to manage it, combine resources for any outgoing materials that have to happen, and making sure that it's a single source or single end solution for all of the different materials.
Just to be clear, I'm still trying to get at that. The composting centers would send the final product to digesters, or is that a destination in itself?
I think that they're both destinations. I think depending on the makeup of the waste, it can go to one of the two different operations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rep Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just want to thank you for presenting this morning. Represent two communities that are part of SCARA, the Southeastern Connecticut Regional Waste Recovery Authority. And historically, our region has had much smaller tonnage fees and paid out much smaller fees associated with solid waste compared to most other regions. I think in large part because of municipal leadership that works collaboratively with SCARA and certainly your team over the years. And so my question, I know we focused a lot on anaerobics, aerobic and or anaerobic digestion. SCARA has proposed co-locating a facility for those purposes. And as we've talked about, that can go a long way of reducing food waste into our solid waste stream and obviously the methane associated with it. My question is specific to the municipal leadership. How important is it to have those strong relations with municipal leadership in order to ensure that just solid waste programming works? Because if I'm not mistaken, again, just Southeastern Connecticut municipal CEOs, in most cases than not, actually serve on these regional boards. They participate directly, and if they're not, their public works director is. When in many cases in some of our smaller communities send volunteers, right? And that's okay, but I think it is important to have the folks really, at the table who make fiduciary responsibilities for their communities. So can you just briefly speak to how important it is to have those strong municipal relations at this time as we're going through the solid waste crisis and transition?
Yeah. I think our relationship with the BRFOC is the perfect example of that. The economies of scale of their combined ability to have a large purchasing power with us gives them an advantageous disposal price. I think it does the same for SCARA down at the Lisbon facility. But it's vital. If we aren't in lockstep with those local communities, then I'm not saying we're doomed to fail, but it's definitely a much heavier lift without the support of those local communities. So, regular interaction, which Fraser does a lot of that, strong relationships, honesty and transparency, those are vital in those relationships. And it's not the only recipe for success, but it's the best recipe for success.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Rep Baumgartner. If there are no other questions from the committee, Tom and Fraser, I'm going to thank you for your time. I had a similar question about those partnerships and municipal leaders, certainly as key folks there, but also the members of those communities. And so we'll look forward to continuing insights from you all about how you manage that and how we could always be doing a better job with it. But thank you for the role that you play and for taking the time to share with us this morning. We have a few more presenters left. We're going to move along to folks from Casella Waste Systems and the National Waste and Recycling Association. I believe are coming to us via the screen. Are you all here and able to say hello?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Thank you for being here. Please take it away.
Right. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, and we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about the work that our industry is doing in Connecticut. I'm Shelley Sayward. I work for Casella Waste Systems, and with me today is Lou Dubuque, who is the Vice President of the National Waste and Recycling Association covering Connecticut, and we're going to tag team this presentation, and Lou has kindly allowed me to kick off. So I am hopeful I will be able to share my screen here.
Looks good, Shelley. Thanks.
Right. Excellent. Thank you so much. So quickly, just a little bit about Casella as a whole. Our service footprint spans from Maine to Maryland, and we have approximately 5,000 employees. We operate 170 facilities, and that includes transfer stations, landfills, recycling facilities, gas to energy plants, and also organics operations. And we're the largest recycler in the Eastern United States. We recover about a million tons of recyclables each year. We've been doing business in Connecticut since 2021 when we purchased Willimantic Waste Paper Company in the northeast corner of the state. Today, we send the majority of the MSW that we collect to in-state incinerators, such as Reworld, who you just heard from. Construction and demolition debris and bulky waste materials are run through a processing facility in Willimantic, and we're able to divert 26% of the materials received there to be recycled, and that includes cardboard, scrap metal, plastics, aggregates, and clean wood. And residual materials from that process are sent out of state via rail for disposal. But as I think about what makes our operations here in Connecticut unique compared to other states in which we operate, it's really the opportunities for recycling. In terms of mattresses, since the passage of the Mattress Stewardship Law of 2013, those hard to manage materials have really been demonstrated that they can be broken down and reused. And the Willimantic mattress recycling facility receives over 200,000 mattresses a year. And we've installed a special pocket coil separator technology that removes metal and PP fabric. And about 95% of a mattress can be recycled now at that operation. And that's a great example of the extended producer responsibility program for a hard to manage material that's been deemed very successful in the state. Our Willimantic materials recovery facility, recycling facility, has been undergoing a complete retrofit over the last few months and is going to be back online shortly. And that operation is going to be able to manage additional recycling throughput using robotics, optical sorters, and AI technology. USA Waste went through a similar upgrade at their Murphy Road location a handful of years ago. And waste and recycling companies are seeing the value of putting dollars to work in Connecticut to collect even more recyclables as commodities based on the high recycling rates in Connecticut, which are some of the best in the Northeast. Food waste collection is also growing in Connecticut. We currently manage materials being source separated at Yukon, and we deliver that food waste to Quantum Biopower for processing and energy production. And as Connecticut continues to enhance food waste collection to include K through 12 schools in the middle of next year, we'll look for opportunities to partner there as well. And we believe strongly that diversion of materials by the larger producers of food waste are going to have the most impact on minimizing greenhouse gases and reducing overall waste. There was definitely some discussion about unit-based pricing this morning, and I'd be remiss in not sharing the industry perspective on unit-based pricing. So the way it works in Connecticut for subscription customers, meaning those that contract directly with companies like Casella for service, customers can choose their toter size, so their collect their bin at the curb, depending upon need. And that can differ between waste and recycling containers. So one could be bigger than the other. For example, you can choose a 96, 64, or 32-gallon container, and pricing is going to differ accordingly. And in addition, a customer can choose how often they want to be serviced, weekly, every other week, or monthly. There's no need to buy a unique bag. Similarly, when companies contract with municipalities directly, container size can typically also be specified, and other service nuances could be required per specifications in the RFP issued by the municipality. So we do think that there's a mechanism in place that accounts for different waste and recycling needs in Connecticut today. Some of the challenges and opportunities that we see today include the need for ongoing customer education. We can always enhance recycling rates and decrease what we call wish cycling. We continue to struggle to find skilled labor, and we want to encourage high schoolers to consider a career in the trades. Regulatory oversight is clearly important, but it's going to be critical to find ways to streamline timelines to encourage innovation and facility upgrades. And lastly, ongoing development of end markets for recycled commodities is key to encourage removal of additional materials from the waste stream. And we believe that can be accomplished through recycled content legislation that requires manufacturers to use a minimum percentage of recycled materials in their products. Thank you for your time today, and I'll pass it over to Lou.
Thank you, Shelley. That was great. Lou, please. And then we'll take questions combined afterwards.
Thanks. I'm Lou Dubuque, the Vice President for the Northeast for the National Waste and Recycling Association. First off, I wanted to address comments that were made by the individual from Waste Zero earlier. He stated that the waste haulers in Connecticut are owned by private equity and don't care. I find those comments offensive and, more importantly, not true. There are many great family-owned waste and recycling companies that are working and dealing with these issues in the state of Connecticut. And if we didn't care, we would not be here today. So with that, I'll get to my presentation. Go make sure. It's not sharing. Hold on a second. There we go. All right, try this again. There we go. Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Yep, looks good, Lou.
Excellent, thanks. All right. Slide one.
It looks like it's in, we see the presenter mode. I don't know if you want to click a button. So it just shows the one thing, but also don't worry, because I think we can still see the main screen.
All right, yeah. As I said, I'm Lou Dubuque, Vice President, Chapter Relations. I represent the entire Northeast from Maine all the way down to Maryland. NWRA is the voice of the national waste and recycling industry. Our members operate in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. We advocate for our members at capitals in all 50 states, as well as in Washington, D.C. We advocate to create a favorable business climate where our members can provide safe, economically sustainable, and environmentally responsible services that benefit all of America. Our members have roughly 18,000 waste and recycling facilities across the U.S. We represent approximately 70% of the private waste sector and recycling markets. Our members collect and manage and waste recyclables, organics, and medical waste. They operate and manage landfills in compliance with all federal and state laws, manage and service truck fleets and collect vehicles, design, manufacture, and sell and service equipment supplies, provide engineering and consulting services. Our Connecticut chapter represents the private waste and recycling industry statewide. According to data collected by NWRA, in Connecticut, the private waste and recycling industry employs nearly 5,500 residents. That annual economic impact at Connecticut state economy generated by the waste and recycling industry is roughly $1.9 billion. Approximately 36% of the state's MSW goes to out-of-state, modern, highly engineered Subtitle D landfills, and just about 10% is composted. The rest is incinerated in the state at privately owned and operated waste-to-energy facilities, while nearly 40% of the nation's solid waste crosses at least one state line daily to access post-collection options. Connecticut is a national leader in recycling and composting. Residents have 98% access to curbside trash and recycling collection at a reasonable price. That is why we are greatly concerned with the use of, quote, disposal crisis to characterize, excuse me, the current situation in Connecticut. MSW is not piling up. In fact, the Connecticut recycling rate is at nearly 36%, is one of the highest in the United States. Connecticut residents should be proud of the state's best-in-class MSW management plan and aware that they do not face a disposal crisis. Connecticut residents have stated that the top priority when it comes to reducing waste in the Nutmeg State are reliability, convenience, affordability, and sustainability. In terms of reliability, our Connecticut members have a proven track record of stepping up in essential situations, such as during COVID and the Mira shutdown. And as I mentioned, there's nothing more convenient than 98% of the towns having curbside pickup and 94% with access to single stream recycling. All this is done at an affordable $20 to $40 a month. For those reasons, Connecticut is consistently in the top 10 in the nation for recycling year over year. That being said, Connecticut is also unique. The town's actual location is significantly alters options available to a town in terms of service, transfer capabilities, transportation costs, and disposal options. Further, its demographics can have significant impact on waste and recycling decisions. And finally, the towns employ different methods of management. 50% of the towns have subscription service in Connecticut, 35% have municipal contracts, and about 15% of the towns have municipal collection and disposal. To stay on this path, it's important to support existing MSW and recycling infrastructure, leverage existing in-state network transfer stations, maintain flexibility for further diversion efforts, and make incremental changes that are measurable and affordable, as well as exploring viable, cost-effective technologies. Because if we don't do this in Connecticut, the rest of the country is littered with examples of what can happen if we move too far, too fast. And with that, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Lou. Appreciate what you shared. And again, the role that you play in our state system is critical. And a big reason we wanted to have your voice represented today. I'll get started and then, of course, open up for other questions from my colleagues. And this, feel free to bounce between the two of you who wants to jump in. I would like to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on any additional EPR programs that we might consider. I appreciate the sharing that the mattress program has been successful. So what else is out there that we could be doing a better job with? I would like to hear about investing in facilities and what you've done and what the state could do to help with that if that's needed, to make sure you can maintain the efficiency. And then I'd like to hear a little bit more about food waste and what you can do to help out with processing that big piece of our stream.
I'll start off, I guess. In regards to EPR, we find EPR is best for hard to manage products, lithium-ion batteries, mattresses, paints, but paper and plastic packaging is not difficult to manage. So we think that EPR for paper and plastic packaging is not a great idea.
Shelley, you want to jump in with any other thoughts on my question?
Sure. I think a few other things that I would add to the list there are solar panels. And again, just things that are not currently being managed at our recycling facilities. What we don't want to do is cannibalize the materials that we are currently receiving and effectively managing, and have that serve as a disincentive for us to continue to make the enhancements that I described. So the robotics, the AI, that is coming to recycling. It is really exciting, and we are going to be able to continue to take more and more out of the stream.
So what's it going to take? Thank you for sharing that. What's it going to take to help bring those innovations into your systems?
I believe our members have already begun to expand infrastructure. I know that USA Recycle has opened new facilities, and these are state of the art. So our members are looking at the new technologies that are available, and they're embracing them.
Absolutely. And you're exactly right, Lou. USA Waste and Casella are both very proud to have state-of-the-art MRFs. Ours will be opening, as I mentioned, in a couple more months. And both companies welcome having members of the legislature come in for tours. We love to show off what it is that we're doing. And so if you want to come see what's happening and how the robots work and the various material streams that we're managing, that is always welcome.
Thank you. I'll keep going, y'all. Lou, you spoke about 4 pillars, what I'm thinking of around what Connecticut's tried to do. I don't think you addressed in that section the thought about being sustainable in state. Now, you did share that, I think, 40% across the state lines. I also think you shared the perspective that's lower than a national average. So I wonder if you can speak to Connecticut's goal about being able to process sustainably in state. Do you think that that's not actually an ideal outcome? Maybe your perspective from.
Yeah, we don't feel that it is necessary. I mean, as I pointed out, we don't feel that there's a crisis in Connecticut. The waste is being dealt with. It's being sent to landfills across the country, and majority of it is being transported on rail, which is efficient and better for the environment instead of being put on trucks and sent on the highways. So our members have come up with solutions to make the state sustainable.
Senator Lopes.
Thanks, Lou. But you do understand our concern that we're shipping larger and larger amounts of our trash out of state, with the potential of our waste energy plants being all over 20 years old and potentially shutting down, creating a future potential situation where we're shipping drastically larger amounts of trash out of state to landfills that, we're not even guessing are going to be full at one point going forward. The basis of our concern is, we may not be in a crisis right now, but we're staring at a crisis. And as legislators and future policy planners, we should be planning now for the potential of an emergency down the road. You do see that situation, right?
We don't think that there is a potential crisis. We don't believe that it is there, where our members have solutions that have been working, will continue to work. But Senator, we will always sit down with you and discuss these issues and try to come up with a solution that works best for everyone.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks, Lou. Any other questions from the committee? All right, folks. I want to thank Shelley and Lou both for being here and taking time to join us today. And we are actually, would you believe it, ahead of schedule. We're going to go to the last speaker on our list. And this is Jen Heaton-Jones from the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority. Thanks for being here with us, Jen, and batting cleanup.
All right, let's see if I can pull the technology off. I'm going to try to also multitask here. So good afternoon, I'm Jen Heaton-Jones. I am going to see if I can share my screen. Let's see. Bear with me. I gotta love. Can't see. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. My apologies. There we go. My technology doesn't like me. Glad we're ahead of schedule. All right, there we go. All right, so for those who don't know me, I'm Jen Heaton-Jones. I'm the Executive Director of the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority. I represent 14 municipalities in Western Connecticut, And I really hope that I can grab your attention. You'll see some of the images on the screen. I'm going to counter a couple of points that have been made today. And I really hope that I can inspire you to make some changes from here, from the state level, and help us at the municipal level. Because I do believe that there is a waste crisis, but I'm not going to go there yet. So, and this isn't about who's right or wrong. I want to just make clear. For me, we all have a different point and a different perspective. We all have something different to gain, and we have different needs and our different benefits. So I'm just bringing mine to all of you today. So I'm going to start with that waste issue impacts every single human being in the world, every resident of the state of Connecticut, at every age. The reality of what we face is that while waste reduction is the goal, we will always need disposal capacity in the state of Connecticut. Waste materials that cannot be reduced, reused, recycled, or composted. Everything has an end of life. Everything must be managed. So my technology isn't working with me, but just bear with me here. So the focus has been about capacity, which is true, but it's not the entire picture. It's about the entire system and how one impacts the other. This picture, I wish you could really see it, counters the point that was just made that there's not an issue in the state of Connecticut and there's not a crisis. I beg to differ. If you could look a little closer, that is an enormous pile of municipal solid waste outside the building of the municipal solid waste building that is permitted to take our waste in the city of Danbury in July of 2021. The material is flowing out of the building, which I've never seen in my 15 years at HRA until that time, because we were always able to manage our municipal solid waste. We always had a place to go. Bridgeport was shut down during that time. And what that resulted with at the time was for us to make a decision as a regional authority. Do we call our waste haulers and tell them, please stop picking up garbage from the curb, from our residents, from their customers? That's not just an impact to us, it's an impact to those homeowners and those businesses. In 1973, the state had a 50-year plan. No one seemed to look beyond that 50 years. We had the capacity to dispose of our own solid waste in an integrated system. What happened? It's simple. We didn't maintain our infrastructure. We had 6 waste-to-energy plants, as you all are very well aware of, and now we are down to 4. Are we going to continue to let them fail? In this slide, which I think is really important to see and counters another point, generation of MSW is not decreasing. This is my data that I stand behind in my region. This is not the full state of Connecticut. This is my 14 municipalities. In 2016, we generated 108,000 tons of municipal solid waste. And on December 31st, 2024, I recorded 149,328 tons of municipal solid waste that went through the Danbury facility here in Connecticut. If you look at the bottom line, there's not a decrease there. There's a steady slow of increase over amount of time. We need capacity. So if we're going to take a comprehensive approach to solid waste management in Connecticut, we need to look beyond traditional household trash and recycling and not just the capacity. I'm going to start with recycling coordinators. This position has become a title, not a position in the state of Connecticut. There is a state statute requiring municipalities to have recycling coordinators. They used to be a hired position. They are no longer a hired position. They're just someone's other job, a title. We need to change that. That is an attitude coming from municipalities, but it also could be something that could be enforced from the state. I think we would never see a town get rid of their town clerk or their public works director. They take those positions very seriously. But I'm not saying we just need recycling coordinators that are just a title. We need paid positions folks that are trained and certified. Our transfer station operators are required to be certified. Why shouldn't our recycling coordinators be required to be certified? So before local waste, and here's another good image, is shipped to a waste-to-energy plant. Much of it is aggregated at a municipal transfer station. The majority of our local facilities are out of date. They're dangerous. They have very poor traffic flow, little or no signage, limited access, with only a very few days and hours of operation and inadequate disposal options. Our facilities are falling apart, and some towns have no place for residents to go. We need help with building infrastructure at the local level. Residents don't really worry about where their trash goes. They only care about when will it go. And that is an obstacle that likely won't change, and we need to plan around that's a fact. They don't really care. Another reality, and perhaps, and it's sort of been addressed today, that we need to consider who owns and operates many of our capacity facilities, our end-of-life disposal facilities. It is owned by private industry. Waste is a billion-dollar industry. Large investment firms have purchased and are now operating waste-to-energy plants with lack of capacity. What does that mean for our future tip fees? And so we need better private-public partnerships to build capacity, and we need our towns to commit to long-term contracts. I want to touch on single stream. It was created to generate more recycling. It was supposed to be a solution, but it's also created a contamination problem. On average, our recycling stream is comprised of 20 to 28% contamination, garbage. This reduces the value of the material. It also increases the cost of disposal. Our MRFs don't complain because they still get paid for this waste. They still get paid for this part of the stream. So contamination, though, still needs to be addressed. And in the next photograph, it shows, these are photographs that I've taken, by the way. They're not stock photos. Human behavior plays a large role in the success of any of our programs, our so-called solutions we want to implement in the future. Following the importance of recycling coordinators, the challenge we are facing is not just about what to do with the material, but how do we get generators, our residents, our businesses to change their behavior, to do the right thing and improve the system. We do need incentives. I just also, in the top corner there, shows what our tip fee is. Our current total tip fee is $70.13. That came out this week. It's actually $42.54. $27.59 of that tip fee is the cost of contamination. It's the cost of the garbage in the recycling stream. That's the reality. I want to touch on hazardous waste. It's often not discussed when it comes to municipal solid waste. We don't want it in that stream. The system for collecting and paying for HHW is unacceptable. The majority of our municipalities offer 1 day a year for our residents to get rid of toxics, flammables, poisonous, corrosive materials. What happens when someone is moving and there's no event? A family member dies, they're out of luck. What if they don't have a car? Are they taking this material in our public transportation? Why do we provide such poor solutions? It comes down to cost. And cost is the driver, but access should be the priority. We'll touch a little bit on hard to manage material. Why do we have a lack of consistent municipal disposal services from one town to the next? And what are folks supposed to do when those services aren't provided? For example, motor oil is a state-mandated recyclable, yet many towns don't have convenient access due to the cost and the fear of PCB contamination. So more and more of our towns are not accepting and leaving little to no option for our residents. So what should they do? So I'm going to turn this around to be a little bit more positive. Try. I'm going to try move the crisis to the opportunity, move to some solutions. Let's talk about public education. The state does have a universal recycling guide created through the Recycle CT Foundation. It was a collaboration effort between our MRFs in the state of Connecticut and DEEP that created that universal guide. The commissioner touched on it. It was formed by statute by Public Act 1494. And, but I want to just touch that we're not funded. I sit on that board. We need funding. The public needs to be educated. We have an opportunity through this foundation. We have a great group of board members from all sectors of the industry, yet we are not funded. We need your help. We wrote a letter to the leadership. We hope that we'll hear back from you before March and our next convening meeting. But we hope to see that through this legislative session, we can get some funding for public education, because this entire system and everything that we're talking about it starts where? It starts with each individual human being, our residents, your constituents. They need to hear from us. I'm going to talk about a few other top solutions, and I'm sorry, I'm going to totally go over my time here. Recycling right and education, source separation programs. That's how we can reduce waste, through pay-as-you-throw as well. Pay-as-you-throw works. I'm going to show you one quick slide on what we're doing in the HRA region. But through the various forms of material management, we can create waste reduction. Here's the slide on Kent's pay-as-you-throw system. It is a very small program, but we can show that even through small communities, we can make big changes. They had a 12% reduction in their pilot year and are experiencing over a 30% reduction in the first 4 months of their permanency. In their HRA region, we have 14 municipalities, 12 transfer stations, and out of our 12 transfer stations, 11 have pay-as-you-throw programs. They work. That's the point. They work. But we need towns to be more incentivized to follow through and implement them. This next slide is showing you that regional authorities and municipalities can create extensive organics programs. I've been working on organics for 10 years. We started the first municipal organics program in Bridgewater in 2014, and since then, we have 9 municipal drop-off programs. We have 2 ASP systems, solar-powered aerated static pile systems, to municipally compost, process our own organics. We are looking to build 2 more if we get grants. And then in every single one of our towns in 2025, we will be putting satellite containers for 24/7 access for all our residents. We as municipalities can be self-sustainable when it comes to organic management. We need money, but we also can partner with our private industry folks and make this happen. I don't think it's a heavy lift. I've shown that we can do it. Infrastructure, in regards to our local transfer stations, we need towns to invest in their own transfer stations. Unfortunately, a lot of municipalities didn't take advantage of the ARPA funds, but we do have some grants through EPA and through Connecticut Deep that I hope to see more transfer stations invest in their own facilities locally. I think we need to think outside the box and on technology. Let's research, let's learn from what other folks are doing in other states and in other countries. We don't have to work in a silo. Let's support, there's supposed to be a slide on quantum. There's a long delay here. We need to support AD facilities and their investors to guarantee feedstock for these facilities by mandates. And the state mandates for municipalities doesn't mean that they have to provide infrastructure. It doesn't mean, even though we have in our region, it means that we need to provide access, just like the motor oil provision that municipalities need to recycle motor oil. Not every town takes it. So not every town has to take organics, but they should be able to provide access to every resident. And when we mandate organics recycling, that means folks like Quantum and other investors say, oh, I have a guaranteed feedstock. I'm willing to invest. I'm willing to build more into the system. We need to provide that to private industry, more guarantee. We also need to support our small businesses like New England Compost out of Danbury. They are also part of the system. We don't also need these large facilities. We need to support small composting facilities that provide good compost to our communities and our landscapers. And the other slide, sorry, my slides aren't working. It's just a photo of our municipal ASP systems and proving that we can be self-sustainable. I'm skipping over a lot of things I wanted to say just for the time. And then I'm going to touch on the Connecticut. We have this capacity issue. If we have an issue on capacity, why aren't we just building more capacity? If that's the issue, let's build more capacity. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to build waste to energy plants or open landfills, but it also means different capacity like transfer stations, AD facilities, composting facilities, facilities for our textiles, for facilities for our recycling, C&D reduction facilities. And if at the end of the day, yes, of course, we need to support expanding our 4 waste to energy plants and maintaining them and not letting them fail. And then I really hope you can see this really sweet picture. Let's plan for the future together through the private-public partnerships. And it's not black and white. It's not us and them. It's us working together to create a better system. We need each other. Municipalities, many of them don't want to be in the business of garbage. They want our private haulers. And I also want to say, we don't have a collecting problem. We have plenty of haulers. In the HRA region, I have 76 registered haulers who collect garbage or rent dumpsters in 14 towns. I don't have a problem getting my garbage picked up. I have a problem of where it needs to go. And I just challenged that, at the end, this is my last slide, and apparently you have my reminder that today is a committee meeting. We need political will and leadership from our municipalities as well as all of you. So I welcome your comments. I thank you for the time. I do have a few comments from some of the questions that were asked earlier, but I'll let you go first. And I'm going to unshare.
Thanks, Jen. Rep. Steinberg.
Thank you. I will say you had me pretty depressed with the beginning of your presentation, but I think it ended up very balanced. I really appreciate that. And I think the point you make about the flaws in the single stream legacy system is particularly important because it costs us on the back end, meaning that we really do need to evolve to something that's going to work for the state. And I'm encouraged by your optimism that those solutions are out there in terms of technology, but more importantly, process and determination, if I could use that word. To your point, right now we have a system.
Your call has been forwarded to voice. That is not me.
Okay, all right. 169 towns all doing their own thing. Are you proposing really a top-down state solution where we have a higher measure of uniformity on how we deal with waste across 169 towns, or in some sort of regional consortium? And lastly, for the education piece, how much would it cost for you to do what you think you need to do?
Okay, so your first question is, the second question is not education, and the first question is about uniformity. I would say in regards to uniformity, obviously, regionalization has proven to be successful. And I'm really happy that Connecticut Deep has provided funding for more municipalities to join together, either as a regional authority or interlocal agreements. It certainly goes a long way. I don't think we should all be working in silos and trying to figure out the same problem. We should be working together. And, if you look, I almost brought this probably 20-inch stack of state plans that I have since 1973 with me as a visual, but I was like, I'm not carrying those all the way in there. But there's some of these plans, we should look back to these plans. They talked about regional waste sheds. So you start with the local transfer station, then a regional waste shed, using our private haulers to come and collect that material to those waste sheds, source separating that material and getting it to the waste to energy plants. So there is a network, a system working together. And we do need to encourage our municipalities not to work alone, but to work with groups and create a successful system through that. And your education, how much money, geez, you're putting me on the spot. I should have thought about that before I came. I think, if we look back in what we started with, we had about $250,000, $250,000. And I think if we could get refunded at least with $250,000 to have a full statewide campaign on education, that would get us somewhere. Certainly, the more money, obviously, the more we can do. But I think we could get basic education, radio ads, billboards, and get to the wider audience in social media if we had funding.
But in one sentence, what would be the message if you had that money?
What would be the message? Recycle more, but recycle right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rep. Horn, and then we'll come down the line.
Thank you, sorry. I'm on crutches, so I got to scooch up to the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jen, for being here today. I also, it's alarming, the side of the problem, but I have always found you to be someone who follows up with actual solutions based on the work that you've done in the past. So I'm really glad that you're sharing your expertise with us. I had a couple questions about funding. I guess the Energy and Technology Chair asked the first one, but I wanted to talk, I have overall interest sort of in, I know that you did the Kent grant from DEEP to run that program. And I have had, I'm interested in how those grant programs work, because it seems to me that they have taken a great deal of time to get out, and they have created incredibly onerous and kind of demeaning requirements for you. So I wonder whether you could comment on that program a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I received 3 SMM grants, one for the town of Kent, Newtown, and Bethel, actually 4, and then for a project manager position to oversee those grants. And I have expressed to several folks, including yourself, some frustration with the administrative burden of these grants. I am grateful, and the DEEP staff has done an amazing job, but I have to express the amount of work on the administrative side to run the grant is more than I can imagine a municipality on their own doing. They are lucky they have a resource recovery authority in my staff, and that I am incredibly lucky that I had a project manager that I was able to pay for through the grant. I would never have been able to meet the goals and the requirements and the reporting that was needed to follow through on that grant.
And I note that I have to believe that creates more obligations on the state end as well to handle all those things. So it doesn't really help anybody to have all that. And I believe you contrasted that with a federal grant aimed at similar, that was of a larger size, but far more efficiently allocated.
Yes, I did receive a USDA grant. I've actually received 2, and they're run very differently.
Thank you. Stay tuned for more conversations about that. Then I just wanted, we had some, I hope, I will express the wish that the chairs of both committees will have the opportunity to get the full presentation that you had with us today. But I wanted to give you a chance. We had some other presenters talking about EPR for packaging, in particular, extended producer responsibility for packaging. And I wondered whether you could comment on that as well.
Yeah, I'm a supporter. Many of you know that. I'm a supporter of extended producer responsibility laws, and worked very hard on the cylinder and the tire bill. And I thank you for your support on that. In regards to, and I do support the concept that it is, we do have a focus on hard to manage material when it comes to EPR. And, but I want to address packaging as an interesting one, because one could say that is it not a hard to manage material or not? And what often I think extended producer responsibility laws get, I think, confused with is that it's simply like, oh, we're just going to put the burden on the producer or the brand owner, and it's really only for material that we as municipalities don't know what to do with or don't have any place to do with. But EPR is also a tool, a mechanism, a financial tool for municipalities. We have absolutely no control of the tens of thousands of packaging material that comes through our system. Neither do the MRFs. I mean, they're always constantly having to change their technology, robots, optical sorters, for the change in packaging from our brand owners. EPR for packaging can be put together by everyone here in the state, including our private industry, to say what works for us in Connecticut, and how do we get the brand owners to take responsibility for creating packaging that can or can't be sorted, can or can't have value at the end of its life, for our material recovery facilities to bale it, sort it, bale it, and sell it, and put it back into the system. But why should we not be challenging brand owners and producers to say that packaging that you produce to market your product isn't recyclable? it's garbage and it adds to the crisis of what we're just talking about. So packaging is either garbage or it's recyclable. Why don't we want to make them responsible? I think in an EPR scheme, we have the opportunity to be creative in our own way in the state of Connecticut. We don't have to follow Maine or California or Colorado and the other EPR laws. We can say we want to create a system that producers share the responsibility. We don't have to make them solely responsible for the packaging they put into our system. And if it has to somehow align with some of the other EPR programs, then so be it. But I do think we can be creative outside that. And I think EPR for packaging is a way for us to find a solution towards end-of-life management for material we don't have control over. Sorry, that's a long answer.
Thank you. Much appreciated, though. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Rep. Horn. Thank you for that. We got time for one question left. Rep. Hughes, please.
Oh, wow. Now I'm like really on the spot. Anyways, thank you so much for your and kind of framework of this is like a collective responsibility and a collective effort to address the crisis. Proud to be one of the districts that have one of your, pilots programs in it. I've noticed a shift in the collective will of consumers to do the right thing. I've noticed a lot more, customers, consumers, whatever, really trying to reduce, really trying to decontaminate their waste stream. Although I have not seen the same kind of actual implementation of that in some of our facilities, some of our nursing homes, some of our assisted living facilities, even some of our schools. I'm like, where's the recycling? Where's the information, the education about how to separate this out and decontaminate that? And those are some of the biggest, collective tons of waste stream coming in. So how can we do both the and of the individual consumers, but also maybe support more resources into, you're talking about paying for a recycling coordinator, but I feel like we need those in those facilities to implement some of these measures.
Jen, hold on one second. I know you're going to be able to do this. Because we're almost done and there were two other people that had questions, I'm going to ask them to share those questions and then let you respond to all of them as we wrap up.
Okay, I got your question.
Rep.
So yours
Dubisky,
is about
please jump
facilities
in and then we'll go online.
Okay. My question was, you had a slide up there with regard to the recycling program at Kent, or the garbage program in Kent. I think you said they were orange bags, and you said that it was a success. How do you measure that that program was a success? Is it because the transfer station started getting less garbage? And if that's the case, do you think that people stopped generating as much garbage, or did they just stop bringing it to the transfer station?
Okay, good question. Very good question.
Thank you for the question, Rep. Dubisky. And then one more question to throw in the mix. Rep. Gresco online.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question goes back to Jen, technology comment you made. As legislators, I'm sure that we've all been approached by individuals that say that they have the next technology that is going to be able to handle our municipal solid waste, be it gasification, pyrolyzation, multiple other technologies. Do you think that we should, maybe as a pilot, let them try to prove to us that what they say is true rather than shipping out our waste to the Midwest? And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Joe. And thanks, Jen, for doing triple duty on this last one. Take it
All
away.
right, you ready? Okay. If we had trained certified recycling coordinators in the state and you had a nursing home in your town and that town had the recycling coordinator, that coordinator could go to that facility and educate them. They could go in with with the knowledge and the experience to tell them what they need to do to help reduce their waste or source separate, manage material. Not every facility needs an expert, but every town needs an expert and that they can reach out to. So that's why I think every town has to, or if a town can't as an individual, then partner with the next town, just like we partner with health departments. In regards to your question regarding Kent, that was a pay-as-you-throw program, not about recycling municipal solid waste. Yes, we looked at data over a certain period of time and what was the average amount of waste that was being brought into that facility from week to week. We looked week to week, then month to month, and year to year, and we saw that was the 12% reduction from the 1 year pre-pilot to the pilot year. The over 30% reduction was from the pre-pilot to the permanent time period, comparing weeks to weeks and months to months. So we're looking really at tonnage. It was also coupled with an organics program at the same time that we implemented the bag system, the prepay bag system, drop and go. We implemented an organics program. I also think what really happened as well is we had a community that embraced the concept. They had a community that said they were paying $150 per person to access that facility, and they could throw away as much as they wanted. We have residents who are looked at over the past year, only $50, $70. You have a little lady that was paying $90 in Newtown for a whole year, going down to $27 a year because she only throws away one bag every 2 weeks. So people are seeing and experiencing the incentive, and so that's why we experienced and saw the success of the program. I think, and did you ask, did they stop bringing garbage? Understand something about unit-based pricing that I think that also gets missed. People don't stop making garbage. They're still making the same amount of garbage they were making, but they're going, oh, I can take this ripped pair of jeans and I'm going to donate it to Goodwill. I'm going to take my organics out. I'm going to recycle more. They're still producing the same amount. They're source separating it and putting it into different containers. And that's really what unit-based pricing does. It incentivizes folks to separate. Okay, on to the last one, technology. Joe, yeah, we need to let people try. How did anyone start anything around here until they tried? Edison tried over and over again to create the light bulb. He would have never been successful if someone didn't let him try or someone didn't believe in him. We need to believe in some of these technologies and maybe invest in them and take a risk. I mean, often it's all about risk taking, and I think we need to take a risk in some of these folks who say they have technology and bring them to the state, and let's see if we can be the first. And if they fail, well, we can say, well, we tried. So thank you.
Jen, what a note to leave us on. Thank you for all of your expertise and the work you do in the state and for answering all those questions and encouraging us to try some new ideas. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank my colleagues from these two committees for coming by. I know folks are jumping in and out and managing a lot. Thank our staff for making this all happen and handling people online and in person. And thank you all for showing up and listening in. As I said in the beginning of this, we want to keep the conversation going this year and maybe come out of this with some new ideas for legislation this year or into the future. And so if anyone out there has ideas from sitting in with us today, please come speak with us afterwards. We welcome your feedback and thank you again for your time. Thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned.